Finally tonight, a story about a nice place they're calling a boom town jokingly. The problem is it's not funny. The good people in one town in Wisconsin would right now give anything to find out what's making that noise.
It was almost like someone took a wrecking ball to the side of the house.
Problem is, no one in this town of 4,600 west of Green Bay seems to know what it is.
I thought a car was coming through my house. It was that loud.
The search for the source of the mysterious booms continues today. Their cameras not catching anything.
I wanted to add to the underground tunnels here also the phenomenon of the mystery booms. There's something going on. There has been in remote areas large booms that shake homes, and it remains a mystery all across the United States. Like Walmarts, they have been at work for a long time. Underground, building networks while no one's paying attention.
Some are called Jade Helm 15. While the military says it's just training soldiers for the realities of war, critics say the Army is preparing for modern-day martial law.
Reporting from the Springdale Walmart, or the closed-down Walmart in Ohio. I want people to notice I'm on the back side of the compound, and this wire runs a lot farther than just the old Walmart. It wraps all the way up around David's Bridal. Reporting from the Springdale, Ohio Walmart with the barbed wire on top of it.
This is their little complex. The sun's in the way. It's an underground facility. It's like a base. That's the top of it. Why in the hell does Walmart Supercenter need that? See the Walmart trucks? And I worked in this little white building here. See, it's like a military style entrance, kind of like a FEMA camp. But I worked in this white building here, and I saw there's a tunnel. You can go from in that building to the underground facility.
After the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center and Pentagon, they apparently decided that they needed to have a bunker. There's a facility for the Walton family in case of an apocalyptic attack, a residence that they can live in and reside in case they had to do that. There's a helipad behind the facility back there where they can come in by helicopter, and there's satellite uplink dishes back behind the facility. And most of it is underground, as you can see. You can't really see much from the gate, which is all fortified.
5 Walmart stores across the country are temporarily closing, they say, for plumbing issues, and one of those stores is at Admiral M Memorial in Tulsa. Now, Walmart says these issues are so large they need 6 months to make these plumbing repairs.
Those associates and customers tell me they just can't believe it's a plumbing issue that's the real issue for the closing. Do you believe it's a plumbing issue?
No, I don't.
Tonight surrounding the sudden closure of 5 Walmart stores across the country, including right here in the Bay Area.
And so, fast forward to 2015, and Walmart is currently under close scrutiny by many, with the mysterious and very suspicious closings of several Walmart stores across the country, allegedly due to plumbing. Many people are now beginning to connect the dots with regards to Walmart and their connection to the government. Their connection, partnerships, and joint ventures with various government agencies on record now, as well as contributions to the tune of at least $1 billion from the U.S. government. It's no surprise why suspicion and concern is at an all-time high regarding this highly connected corporation.
The planned demise of the children of God. An end times message from myself, Messenger Gwendolyn Ricks. Words received from Jehovah Elohim, the loving Father of the universe. June 16, 2015. My dearest children, whom I love more than anything in the universe. Dear children, the hour is late, and I would like to unravel some more mysteries through my end-time scribe and prophetess, Gwendolyn. I would like to reveal to you some of the end-times plans of the enemy, and have my holy children begin praying against these evil plots. I would also like each and every person upon this planet to understand the significance of this plan to warehouse my precious children and enslave or kill them in carefully thought out concentration camps. I would also like to take my children back in time a bit to refresh their memories of the largest company of the New World Order called Walmart. Before any of my holy children knew it, the devil had been scheming. He was scheming of a plan to hurt the children of God at the end of time. He used time against my children in such a discreet way, so as to not allow them to see the plan unfolding. The enemy devised a plan that was so far-reaching and so detailed that it would have seemed preposterous that it was a plan of his. The plan began with a man named Sam Walton, who was actually a man sent by Satan himself. He was an opportunist, and he wanted to imitate the environment of the concentration camps that he oversaw as a worker at the end of World War II. He was dedicated, and he was a student of the Third Reich. He knew more of the plans of the concentration camps than most even knew, and he was called to serve as an agent of Satan. He surrendered his life to the service of the enemy and was given very detailed instructions as to how to carry it out. You will have to do very careful research to corroborate this story, my dearest children, because just as you will not find much information on Prince William's Illuminati roots, you will also find that much of the information of Sam Walton's true spiritual side has been concealed from the general public on purpose. It was all a part of a cruel hoax. My children, legislation to support the cause of Satan quickly unfolded during the presidency of George W. Bush. He was one of the presidents that did much of his work for the New World Order in the late hours of the night. Legislation was being passed while the children of God slept, and much of the funding for the intricate work of the Walmart stores was passed without the children of God even knowing. While my children were sleeping, the powers of the beast were revving up. The beast was working through a select, small group of people, and the beast knew that the plan had to be incorporated in secret, or it would not come to be. The beast also knew his time was short, and so he had cleverly kept this plan a secret from even the top elite by creating a large worldwide network of stores called Walmart. Please, dear children, come before me, and I will show you that these things are true as you lift them up in prayer before your God and King. The plan was actually a simple plan, dearest children. The plan was to create a company that outsold the other companies and would come into contact with the lives of every one of the children of God. A successful model was developed overnight, and then the stores began popping up in a very careful fashion all across North America, and then onto Europe and China. The roots of this plan even incorporated measures to steal away business opportunities from my children in North America by moving the source of goods to China. It was a very detailed and evil plot, and it was carried out with great success. Some of the children of God saw this plan unfolding, but because of the disobedience of my children in North America, I allowed it to unfold. My children have turned their noses up and away from their one true God, and I allowed this to occur to bring them back closer to my heart. I do not wish for any of my children to suffer, but my children will not listen to the Spirit's tugging on their hearts. They would not slow down and sit in my presence. They found all sorts of other foreign gods. In my holy word, it states to not have any other gods before your Creator. Come back to me now, my dearest children. Come back to me this day, because the events that are about to unfold in your once great nation and across the rest of the civilized world is a very heinous plan. Come back to me now, for tomorrow will be too late. The retail store known as Walmart is actually a very carefully thought out plan of concentration camps, my dearest children. They were set up in a way that would entice the children of God to come to them over and over again by undercutting the price of its competitors. If you notice the slogan of the store, "Live Better," this slogan is a slap in the face to the children of God. It is a masterful plan to use catchy phrases and subliminal training of the mind over time. Eventually, each of these stores will be cleared out of their merchandise, and guillotines and marking devices will be installed. The plan of the enemy is to use this carefully thought out network of stores to warehouse the children of God after the sixth seal is broken. After the peace treaty is signed dividing my holy land in Israel, there will be global earthquakes. There will be catastrophe after catastrophe, and there will be massive civil unrest. The government will encourage the children of God to go to their local Walmart stores to receive public assistance, just as Hitler did during his reign of terror. He was the Führer, and whatever he spoke became the law. This is the way the Antichrist will usher in his own form of civil obedience. He will instruct the children of God to head to their local Walmart stores where they have already been shopping and making their lives better day after day. He will tell them that the resources that they need are located within each and every store. And they will have resources there too, dear children. They will. It will be a limited amount of resources, and there will be a price to pay for receiving their assistance. They will encourage each of my children to receive a mark upon their right hand or their forehead in order to be able to be placed into their system and to receive clean drinking water and food to feed their families. There will be great civil unrest, dearest ones. It will be the true unfolding of the early stages of the beast, edging his way into the lives of every one of my precious children. Come before me this day, dearest loves, and I will confirm this message is from the one true God. I will also speak to your hearts about the peace of God and how I will love you and watch over you as these events begin to unfold. I love you all, my dearest children. I sent my Son to the earth to die a cruel death on the cross in order that each of you would be free from the pits of hell. Come unto me this day. Love, Jehovah Elohim.
Welcome to Walmart, your New World Order dreamland. The truth is, this mega retail corporation epitomizes everything wrong with society and culture today. Look no further than this slave goods, GMO, chemical foods wasteland to see just what America is now all about. This is all part of the plan and design. Despite the fact that all you will find at Walmart are extremely low quality cheap goods manufactured overseas in slave labor concentration camps, mostly from China, millions still flock to consume. Yes, around 80% of all Walmart suppliers are in China. Slaves in China manufacturing, and slaves in America stocking the shelves, running the cash registers, and falling for the scam that they are saving money by purchasing these cheap goods from Walmart. The fact is, this devouring beast of a corporation ruthlessly stomps on workers, neighborhoods, competitors, and suppliers. It has and will continue to destroy the world economy and labor force. It is the perfect New World Order enterprise. The Walton family, which controls Walmart today and is actually the richest family in the United States, lives on blood money. They operate jointly with the City of London Wall Street bankers. The truth is, this family became one of the world's wealthiest families by decimating the US and world physical economies. The Wall Street City of London financier oligarchs have financially backed and in fact directed the development of Walmart since it was founded in 1962 by Sam Walton, who also founded Sam's Club. Ironically, this is a man who is highly respected by the club. Make no mistake about that. Sam Walton was a captain in U.S. Army intelligence and friends with none other than the New World Order Bush family themselves and George Bush Sr. The Walton family's support for the Bushes goes back many years.
America's highest civilian honor, the Medal of Freedom, awarded to Samuel M. Walton, March 17, 1992.
The story of Sam Walton is an illustration of the American dream. His success is our success, America's success. And sir, you are generous and genuine, tireless and tenacious, and you took risks and helped our country grow vigorous and strong. The world can therefore seize this opportunity to fulfill the long-held promise of a new world order. We can find meaning and reward by serving some higher purpose than ourselves, a shining purpose, the illumination of 1,000 points of light. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN.
Christian greetings, everyone. This is Nicholas from Presence of God Ministry welcoming you to this week's Truth Provided broadcast. The website is www.remnantofgod.org. If you got any questions or comments, please feel free to call at 1-800-858-6582. If you have unlimited long distance, please use the cell phones or call the 559-733-5161 if you have unlimited or cell phones. And if you're listening to the broadcast online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com using dial-up, and you can't, get to a second phone line because you're using it, I invite you to join us on the website at www.remnantofgod.org. And then just click that silver microphone that you see on the main page and then follow the prompts until you get to the public room of the POGM, that's Presence of God Ministry, audio chat section of the website. You can share any comments or questions you have with me live. There's a little bit of a lag, of course, because of the fact that it's radio. But I do on occasions answer or field questions from the chat room. So let's get right to it. Revelation 20, verse 4 says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, in which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years." You know, as we see in Revelation 20, the prophecy clearly declares that some of the children of God that do not go along with the papacy's mark will find themselves at the business end of a guillotine. All too often, though, the argument arises, how can we, as a modern and more civilized people, use guillotines? I mean, would this not be barbaric as well as insane in today's age? After all, we're civilized, and execution methods of the Dark Ages are just plain outdated. Therefore, this must prove the prophecy of Revelation chapter 20 to be completely false, right? Well, you may want to suggest to those that speak such words regarding prophetic facts that they should hold on to their hats, literally. A couple of years ago, some of you may recall that frequent my website that I made a statement on my old current events page that information had crossed my desk regarding the reality that thousands of guillotines were being stored on American soil. Not long after I posted that information, someone who thought I was acting, I thought they were acting on my best interests, informed me that conspiracy theories such as this will lend to soil the message of my ministry and I should remove the ridiculous claim about the guillotines immediately. Well, after much thought, and I will admit, I didn't pray about it. Should have, but I didn't. I decided to go along with that person's suggestions and remove the information I placed on that page. Well, I'm now kicking myself for doing just that. Not too long ago, I received word that the information received regarding the guillotines was not only accurate, it was actually being lobbied in Washington, D.C. to get them legalized for governmental use. The states I mentioned on my current events page a few years back were in fact Georgia and Montana as the recipients of these guillotines. The information I had received was, at that time, was 15 or 30,000 guillotines have been shipped to Georgia as well as Montana for safekeeping until such a time as they're needed. Now, I don't recall the exact number. It's been a while. However, I do believe it was 15,000 guillotines for each storage facility. If it's true, and if so, what are they up to? Some of us that live down south may recall the video that was somehow released to the general public of a man being electrocuted in a Georgia prison facility. For those of us that saw that movie, The Green Mile, we know that if you do not place water on the sponge upon the man's head that is to die by electrocution, his death will not only be prolonged and extremely violent, his head will actually ignite during the process. Not a very pleasant death, to say the least. Fact is, many are aware, state executions are never videotaped as well. However, some tape appears of a man being electrocuted in Georgia, and it somehow surfaces in the general public. Now, we also know by viewing the tape that they did not place water as a necessary conductor in that sponge, because the video did in fact show the man's head igniting after he bounced around for quite some time in that chair. To think someone would actually put someone through such a torturous act so as to just get the law lobbied? Is this not evidence that Rome's involved? I mean, where else do you hear of such horrendous tactics in history? Question: why do you suppose a video would surface of an execution when videos are never made at executions, from what I understand, and most certainly never released to the public if they were made? And why do you suppose they somehow forgot to place water on that sponge? Well, the answer is plain. The video was released so the American public can see it and complain about the inhumane methods used, thereby giving the government officials a springboard to start lobbying process for guillotines. The video is no mistake. And neither were the statements made afterwards regarding the graphic video. The governing officials in Georgia were shouting it was inhumane to kill people like this. You know, the prophecy declares that some will be killed by guillotine. And that is what must occur. So the enemy will eventually figure out ways to get this done. Not because they believe prophecy, don't get me wrong, and want to do as the Almighty declares. I mean, they're definitely not doing what prophecy declares to glorify God. Not at all. The fact is the Lord saw this end result from the beginning and decided to tell us in advance in His prophetic word. The wicked are merely doing what the Almighty already saw them do long ago. In other words, they're going to do it because our Lord saw them do it. Not long ago, after that video surfaced, many state officials, including the governor of that state, started a massive campaign to stop executions by electrocution. What was their decided choice for execution, you ask? A no-brainer, huh? The guillotine. Now, some of you may be asking why, in this modern age, we would have government officials lobbying for laws that would require guillotines as a way to kill those they deem worthy of death. Now, of course, this is the people that would ask that question are people that have no inkling whatsoever of prophecy, of course. We're just asking for common sense purposes. Why would they want to do this? I mean, it's since it's in prophecy, you would think they don't want to have anything to do with it. If it's going to, point the finger right back at them, of course. But seeing how the wicked can't understand prophecy anyway, it really doesn't make a difference. But still, they're going to use guillotines. And still, the prophecy says they would. And so the common sense question would be of a non-believer, why? With our technology, with all our civilized ways, with all our humane laws, what would drive men to kill with such a thing as a guillotine? Money. That's right, folks. It's the exact same thing that moves the beast in Rome to do the things it does. The almighty dollar bill is what they worship, and the almighty dollar bill is what directs their paths. They truly serve the God of mammon. We're living in an age when we see commercials on TV telling everyone in the USA to sign the backs of their driver's licenses so they can harvest our organs for profit. Doctors all over the land lurk about like Igor in a Frankenstein flick, waiting for their patients to show signs of fading. The doctors jump at the first opportunity to harvest your dead loved ones before they even have a chance to get cold on the table. Think of it. You can now get over $40,000 for one kidney. Imagine what an entire human body is worth with 2 kidneys, 2 eyeballs, a heart, a liver, lungs, skin, gallbladders, bone marrow, blood. It just goes on and on. Hair or anything. They'll use your fingernails. They're not going to waste anything if they can make a buck. The hospitals of the world have been literal body snatchers right before our eyes. Keep in mind as well, the governing officials of the world also see a cash cow in the executioner's cage because they know what they can get for those flesh organs. And the Almighty Creator knew of this long before any of our transplant surgeons were even born. Isn't that awesome how this prophecy works out? He doesn't have to give us the gory or morbid details as to why they will use the guillotines. He just tells us that they're going to be using them. So let's cut to the chase. No pun intended. Why would guillotines represent the better option? I'm sure most of you have figured it out already. Why don't they choose lethal injection as an alternative? It seems peaceful. It's not like that stuff that they used to use on dogs and stuff years and years and years ago that made the dog appear to be going into, sleep and then die. That stuff was actually putting the dog into torture, like he was on fire, but he was paralyzed where he couldn't scream out. They found that out years later. But lethal injection of a human is supposedly different. It's like they're just going off to sleep. It's a very humane way to break the 6th commandment, I think. Or what about cyanide gas? The same gas used on the Jews that was manufactured by the family business of Pope John Paul II's parents. In fact, John Paul himself was the salesman of the gas. I never heard anyone igniting or screaming or writhing for 2 or 3 minutes in a chair in a gas chamber or in excruciating pain or on a lethal injection table. Have you? So why don't they just use those already in use. You know, the so-called humane methods to kill Christians. They will eventually have in their jails. Let's get back to common sense. Because the organs would be poisoned and not worthy of harvesting. Bottom line, you can't make money. What I'm about to share with you is an excerpt from Bill number 1274 in the Georgia House of Representatives. You can view the entire bill on the Georgia House of Representatives website. Notice how the bill lets the cat out of the bag as to why they wanted the guillotines in the first place, and it's not as they said when they brought it to the public's attention. This is Georgia House of Representatives 1996 or 95-96 sessions. The House Bill 1274, death penalty guillotine provisions, Code Section 17-10-38-17-1044. Section 1. I'm just going to read you these two small paragraphs. You know, it's from line 11 to 16, and then it jumps to 18 to 115. Nothing to it. You can read the whole thing if you want. Just go to my site and go to the guillotines page. Yeah, I'll be putting a guillotines page on the warnings and the prophecies sections of the website. I do already have a newsletter about this, but I got some new information just the other day which prompted me to redo this whole thing. Anyway, it says, the law, to amend Article 2 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the death penalty generally so as to provide a statement of legislative policy to provide for death by guillotine, to provide for applicability to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Now listen to this paragraph. The General Assembly finds that while prisoners condemned to death may wish to donate one or more of their organs for transplant, any such desire is thwarted by the fact that electrocution makes all such organs unsuitable for transplant. The intent of the General Assembly in enacting this legislation is to provide for a method of execution which is compatible with the donation of organs by a condemned prisoner. The video that was released of the man in the electric chair declared quite boldly, this is inhumane. Did it not? For those of us that saw it. Yet we see here in the wording of the Georgia House Bill number 1274, their main concern is not whether or not it's inhumane. The bill states plainly, electrocution makes all such organs unsuitable for transplant. Is prophecy so amazing? They don't care about the inhumanity at all. The video was merely a way to pull at the heartstrings so as to get their agenda springboarded before certain eyes. You know, had they alerted the public that they wanted to use guillotines so as to harvest organs of dead inmates, there would there'd be public outcry. And their lobbying would have hit a wall, a brick wall. Think about how advantageous this beheading affords them. All the advantages. Our technology is such that these bodies, headless bodies, can be kept alive indefinitely with the machinery that we have in our hospitals today, so as to assure the organs stay fresh. How are they going to hide that fact? I mean, who knows? Who cares, actually? But the reality is plain. You can walk into any hospital in the USA right now and find people in what's referred to as a clinically dead state of mind, or just physical state, clinically dead. Yet, their bodies are still breathing quite readily. Plus, with the onset of perfecting heart transplantation procedures, it's now an easy task to restart a heart that has been completely drained of its blood. So, in essence, they can lop off your head, restart your heart, and have a machine breathing for you indefinitely. Imagine the gruesome sight of a headless body on a table, breathing. You don't need a head to breathe. They can tap into the lungs at the base of the neck in what's called a tracheotomy. And again, you do not need a brain to keep a heart beating. There are scores of brain-dead people in hospitals today all over the world with perfectly beating hearts. Let's imagine some of the possibilities for a moment. What if some of the bodies never make it to the transplant tables? Perhaps they're kept alive to use as human guinea pigs. Lately, they have been testing head transplantation thanks to the funding of Richard Reeves after he fell off that horse. and became paralyzed from the neck down. You all know who he is. He's the guy that played Superman in those Hollywood movies. From what I understand, just a few months ago, they successfully transplanted a head from one monkey to another. Let me ask you what I consider to be a dumb question. If you're in jail, for whatever reason, the government has put you there, and they decide you have to die because the Pope says so in his newly formed global mandates, what choice of execution are you going to take? Seriously, what person in their right mind is going to say, fry me, I want to bounce around for a few moments in writhing pain? The prophecy declares the children of God will be jailed and executed by guillotine. And we see that soon that will be the case in Georgia. And quite honestly, I do believe they will not give the prisoners a choice on this anyway. When the money starts funneling in, death by guillotine will become mandatory. I mean, common sense again. Did they ever give people a choice not to be electrocuted in the past? So why would they let them decide in the future? I mean, come on. In some states you have like two options, I think, but most states it's either lethal injection or the chair. If I'm not mistaken, there are some states that offer hanging, but most of them are chair, or I don't know if the death penalty has been reinstituted yet, but from what I understand, there's been a stay in Illinois. You know, for whatever reason they think of, many of us will be indeed blessed with the wonderful opportunity to die a martyr's death for our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We'll have that blue ribbon around the base of our robe in heaven for eternity. And don't think it'll stop in Georgia. 30,000 guillotines is a bit much for one state. They always start somewhere and move on from there. I mean, take, for example, the Sunday laws that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with me and Rob Sessler from lightministries.com. It's since January 1st of 1999, it became against the law to work on Sundays without a work permit. That is the end time. It's a herald of the end time event globally. But they're just testing it out in Rhode Island. Why? Well, you know, again, common sense. Where do most of the big guys, the bigwigs, literally, that's where the term bigwig came from, is from the governing authorities with those fake white, you know, George Washington-looking wigs on. Bigger the wig, the more important the guy. But all the bigwigs are in Rhode Island, and they test out a lot of the laws there. From what I understand, I don't know. I'm not as well versed in the law and stuff like that as some of the guys that do preach on or speak on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. But I do have my fair share of common sense. So does anyone know how many large cities there are in the USA? Are there 30,000 of them? I don't think so. I mean, I truly don't know, but if you divide 30,000 guillotines by 50 states, you come up with 600 guillotines per state. And I know there's not that many big cities. I mean, you got Chicago, you got New York, you got L.A., you got Miami, you got some big cities, but then you got some of the smaller cities like, say, Champaign, Illinois, or even Oak Lawn, Illinois, and stuff like that, you know. But I can, you know, I mean, will they be used as a scare tactic? I mean, will they be putting these, like Haman did in his backyard, have this big old gallows sitting there so all the Jews can look at it, and, you know, in the book of Esther? Well, yeah, sure, they're going to use it as a scare tactic. You better believe it. That's how Rome has always worked. You know, during the Dark Ages, they used to put robes on people with drawings of all sorts of gruesome drawings all over the clothing of people screaming and writhing in pain from being, you know, skinned alive or boiled in oil or burned alive or whatever. And they put the drawings and paintings or whatever on their robes that they put on these people to intimidate the faithful into recanting their decision regarding Christ. And some of them fell for it, but praise the Lord. Not all of them did. And by the way, how do you suppose Christians will end up behind bars? Sure, most of us will have fabricated crimes designed around us to make us residents of the Gray Bar Motel, but there are certain crimes that they're going to put against us that we may be convicted of, that we don't even know how, you know, where they're coming from. And what are some of these certain crimes? And am I talking through my hat here? Well, I don't wear a hat, but headline, national issue. One court for all the world. Now, this is an old article, of course, but it bears hearing at this point. A United Nations meeting in Rome is wrapping up 5 weeks of work on a proposed international criminal court. The new court would have worldwide jurisdiction and could investigate, indict, hold, try, and punish those who committed certain crimes. The proposed international criminal court would subject Americans to a new world authority. We're talking about creating here something that exercises genuine power, real put people in jail power, but that is responsible to no one but itself, said Lee Casey, a constitutional lawyer with the Washington firm of Hunton & Williams, and he said this in the Investment Business Daily on Thursday, July 16, 1998, from Los Angeles, California. Now, why are they so vague about the certain crimes? And what do you suppose a certain crime would be for Rome? How would they define it? What do they consider a crime? Keep in mind, this is the Roman International Criminal Court, and the Pope is sitting at its head since '99. And he's also sitting at the head of the UR, the United Religions, since June 26, 2000. There's absolute power, church and state. So what would they define crime as? From Joshua Strong's book, Our Country, Chapter 5, paragraphs 2 to 4, it says, the Archbishop of St. Louis said this: heresy and unbelief are crimes. Stopping there for a minute. Where in the Scriptures does it say that not believing in Jesus Christ is against the law of man? Actually, I can understand it being, a bit of a problem with the Almighty himself, but where does man have the authority to step into that point? This is why Jesus said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but give unto God what is God's. You got to keep it separate. Pat Robertson, you got to keep it separate. Your Christian coalition wanting for the conjoining or commingling of church and state, you are doing the work of the devil, sir. Absolutely, positively, you are doing the work of the devil, and he's using you in a mighty way. But anyway, the article says, here is heresy and unbelief are crimes, and in Christian countries, as in Italy and Spain, for instance, where all people are Catholics, and where the Catholic religion is an essential part of the law of the land, they are punished as crimes. Every cardinal, archbishop, and bishop in the Catholic Church takes an oath of allegiance to the Pope, in which occur the following words: heretics, schismatics, and rebels to our said Lord the Pope, or his aforesaid successors, I will to my utmost persecute and oppose. Now, if somebody would have said that in Times Square, you think they'd get thrown behind bars? Well, yeah. But if they're saying it from St. Peter's Square, ain't no problem, for some reason. The Vatican has the one world court. The Vatican has the one world church. And as soon as we see or more or less we experience the global financial disaster that James chapter 5 speaks of, the Vatican, which is already holding the euro with the Pope's image on it, or the euro is actually the one world currency, you'll see soon. And were you aware that it's backed by the Treasury in the Vatican? The wound of this beast will be a 100% healed wound at that time then. And the people of God will be arrested for certain crimes. And the United States of America will do exactly as prophecy said it would. It will help Rome kill the Christians and enforce the mark of the beast. And of course, many of us will choose death over denying the truth we know in Christ. Praise God. America was started mainly because the children of God sought a land where they could be free from papal persecution. And now we see every president in the modern era, as well as religious leaders, meeting with the prophetically known man of sin. I've got quotes from every denomination, every major denomination, from some as little as 20, 30 years ago that say the Pope is the man of sin, the son of perdition. He is the puppet of Antichrist. But now, you can't get any of them to say this. In fact, they'll say he's got the Holy Ghost. He's the man of the year. He's the best guy. I look what Billy Graham's saying about the Pope. And when Billy Graham started out, the Catholic churches in the areas, because I know I was Catholic when I was a kid. Up until I was 29, I was Catholic. And I remember how they were telling us, I was sitting right there in the pew, and the priest stopped his sermon, whatever he says, and oh, by the way, Billy Graham's right down the road in one of his tent revivals. You stay away from there. He'll proselytize you away from this church. Because he's claiming our Pope to be Antichrist. And we all shook our head as, oh, you can't say that. This guy's a holy man. not understanding prophetic jurisprudence very easily to say, we think he's holy. But now Billy Graham says he believes the Pope has the Holy Spirit, and he echoes the Pope's words in stating that Jesus Christ is not needed to gain salvation. Some of you may have heard the broadcast that I shared in regards to that with all the evidence where Billy Graham, Robert Schuller, the Pope, and Cardinal Francis Arins, the possible successor to John Paul, said the same thing. The Pope is dictating to the most powerful nation on earth its agenda, and the USA must comply. Any president that chooses to deny the desires of Rome will find that over 50% of the Congress is Catholic, making his denial trivial. He will also notice that over 50% of the Senate is Catholic, thus proving his desires dead in the water. Not to mention the Supreme Court being 100% Catholic in morals as well. He's got no choice. He's got to comply. After the break, we'll get into a little bit more detail. Welcome back, everybody. This is Nicholas, Presence of God Ministry. Website is www.remnantofgod.org. The phone number to call in is 1-800-858-6582. If you have unlimited long distance or are using a cell phone with free minutes, 559-733-5161. As I was saying right before the break, if a president wants to go and suggest something in any shape or form, he's going to have to get past the Congress, which is mostly Catholic, and the Senate, of course, which is mostly Catholic. This is why you're seeing all these strange laws with the homosexuality and stuff. And then, of course, the Supreme Court is 100% Catholic in their morals, so the president's got no choice. He's got to comply. However, if the president still decides to ignore the desires of the Pope, well, then his life is in danger. Hence, John F. Kennedy's assassination not long after denying certain demands of his Pope. I'm sure many of us have scanned the websites that have ample info on why Kennedy was shot and how it was the Vatican that, gained most by his death. Plus, it was the Vatican that would be hurt most by Kennedy's decisions in office as well if he decided to live on. So I don't feel I need to get into that right now, but most people are already well aware of what's up regarding Kennedy. I mean, the stories coming from Washington, D.C. are so stupid. It amazes me how they themselves think any of us believe that's garbage that they're handing us. They think, let's just make up some baloney, and because you can't really find the guy that started the story, and so because the government's so big now, they go, it's that guy, he did it, no, he said it, no, he said, you got no choice now. It's like this giant monster with these, like 1,000 heads standing there. Every president, by the way, has to deal with the Pope. They all have to meet him. The present one is no exception. Back in May of 2002, he met with him twice. And just after the 9/11 situation, the president's father met with the Pope as well. Now, could it be to discuss the family friends, the Bin Ladens? I am positive this was most assuredly the case. It's no longer debated that the Bush family and the Bin Ladens are old friends. In fact, It's already been announced that the Bushes always stay at the bin Laden mansion when traveling in that region. By the way, are you curious as to why the Bush is meeting with the Pope? Could it be to join in agreement with the Roman International Criminal Court? The necessary number of countries have already signed the treaty making the Roman Statute of International Court System a reality anyway. However, the USA has not opted to, they opted not to sign so far. But will they? Personally, I don't believe it matters at this point anymore. I see it's merely just a formality now. Prophecy declares that the USA will help the beast enforce the mark anyway. So regardless of what they decide in Washington, D.C., the USA will help Rome kill Christians. Our God cannot lie. It's just going to happen. So, was Bush meeting with the Pope for a reason? Was something on the near horizon that needs his extreme attention? Well, the fact is well known across the globe that any time any governing official is about to do any major change in policy, he must always have an audience with the Pope to assure their agenda doesn't harm his. Everyone in office knows who the one world government has already elected as their leader. Just a matter of publicly or officially letting the humans know that are running on this planet. So, does this meeting between the Pope and Bush affect all of the people on Earth, and does it tie with the 30,000 guillotines on American soil? Well, the fact is, the International Criminal Court officially began July 1st, 2002. You can go to their website, www.un.org/law/ICC, and notice the announcement on page 1. They have, in capital letters no less, entered into force on July 1st, 2002. No doubt this will be a hot topic between the two whenever they meet. So, no matter what Bush decides, the Vatican will have its power regardless if he signs or not. And the true child of God will have their persecution personally directed by the Roman Catholic Court itself. The Pope has the one world church, the court, the money. The governments have the people under control with executive orders as well as new laws enacted thanks to the so-called terrorist attacks on 9/11. And the human islands are well surrounded now. The Homeland Security is set up and accepted by all, and all they await is the financial catalyst that will get all the laws enforced on each and every person alive, that the executive orders laid out in detail beforehand. And for those that won't go along with them, well, their heresy will have them making a choice of cold, hard steel or a massive dose of electricity as a method of execution. Now, the big picture gets smaller, doesn't it? Especially since you get a glimpse of it in his word beforehand. The sad thing is, most of the world cannot see it. Even if you had a video, they wouldn't catch it. This includes those who claim Jesus is Lord. Main reason being is they believe the twisted prophecies of Rome. Most Christians I meet actually believe, for example, like the temple must be rebuilt in Jerusalem before Christ returns. But the Word of God says the temple veil ripped at Christ's death, proving this temple on earth is no longer needed. The Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world, John 1:29, already died for our sins on that cross. Shall we start sacrificing animals again? Well, truth is, Rome already started. I have the picture of the very first goat killed on a Roman Catholic altar in Africa in one of their churches back in 2002. Just go to my current events page or current events section, click on quickies, the quickies, and scroll down to the bottom and hit Quickie Archives. And if you got dial-up, kick back for a little while because it's going to take a little while to load up. There's a lot of articles. And then when it finally loads in, scroll down till you'll see a picture of a dead goat and read the article. And I also implore you to look up the articles with headlines that say stuff like animal sacrifices in Catholic Mass, because it's all over the internet already, pictures and all. Many also believe Jesus will rapture them up before the plagues. Even more believe Jesus will bring 1,000 years of peace and rule from that temple in Jerusalem on planet Earth. And still others believe that Israel will be surrounded when Jesus, who is actually Antichrist, steps in to save them. The fact is, Israel was already surrounded in 70 AD. So, well, anyway, the fact is all the twisted lies that they preach are designed to get them looking elsewhere and not at the actual prophetic events of today that the Bible so accurately lays out before us. And you can't totally blame the preachers either anymore. You step into some of these Bible colleges. It's insane. I remember, I never forget this. And this was in the 70s, before I was even a Christian. I thought, man. And I was a Catholic back then, but now I look back and I know I wasn't a Christian because of the way I was living. But the thing is, I'm reading an article, and they had this, I can't remember the exact, it's in my book, People Get Ready, on the website. I got the actual source and everything for the article where I saw it. And I sourced it out and everything, and you can find it. It's easy enough. But they did a survey or a poll, and they asked all the student ministers that were in Bible college at that time if they believed in the second coming of Christ, and 98% of them said no. Only 2% said they did. 98% of the student ministers in the 70s said they did not believe in the second coming. They're your pastors today. Another fact is none of those so-called prophecies regarding the temple or the pre-trib rapture or 1,000 years of Christ on earth are found in the Bible. They'd be very hard-pressed to do it, and the only way they're going to do it is to twist Scripture. But if you put them all in context and read the preceding and the trailing verses of the ones they're pulling out, you'll see they're yanking your chain. It's that easy. That's why when you, like for some churches, I mean, the Catholic Church got that part down to a science. You'll actually have a missalette when you go to church in the Catholic Church. You're not taught to bring a Bible in. He's not going to be preaching from it anyway. He'll do it from the missalette. And the missalette is like a little TV guide. It just tells you every week what he's going to, for the whole year, or actually per month. And some of them have a whole year. You can buy those. But they usually have them sitting there in a pew, and you can pick it up and find out exactly what he's going to preach that day and what verses he's going to hit on. And you'll always notice he'll, have one verse here and then jump down 10 verses. I mean, he'll take everything, boom, 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 way out of context, and he won't go with the stuff that's in between. Sad. And this is where you get all these spurious doctrines. Yet most people believe them because that's what's being preached from the pulpits, or mentioned at gatherings, or printed in tracts, or portrayed on videos, or spoken by TV evangelists, and discussed on radio broadcasts the world over. That way, when the real prophetic events occur, the Christians will be totally unaware that they're happening because they're looking for something else. They're watching Israel and the temple construction instead. Think about that. Do you really need the temple rebuilt? Will they really need to start sacrificing animals once again? I mean, yes, they will do so only to deny the Lamb of God who declared from his very cross, it is finished in John 19:30. But the Jews, they don't even believe in Jesus Christ, and they are the ones that Rome will help to rebuild the temple. Since it's now listen to this. Please, hear me on this one. Since it's the non-believing Jews rebuilding it and proclaiming it rebuilt for the Messiah and his first coming, Christians out there that believe it should be rebuilt are joining the Jews in denying Jesus came in the first place. Because if you believe it's going to be built a third time, again, then what you're in essence saying is it has to be. You know how the Catholic Church got around that? I got the article on the site where the bishops got together with a bunch of rabbis, and they even chuckled in the article. They laughed about it. It's okay, let's just put it down this way. When Jesus comes back, we'll claim him as second coming, and you guys can claim him as the first arrival. And they all go, ha, 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 that's a good idea. And they laughed about it. Stay in your Bibles and study your prophecy. Soon the freedom of all mankind will be extremely limited. The governments of this world will declare that we need to give up a little freedom for the sake of security, and some will go so far as to belittle the rights of many without any explanation. How many recall the ridiculous statement made by one of the most evil men known to date, William Jefferson Clinton? In USA Today, March 11th, 1993, on page 2A, he said, "We can't be so fixated on our desire to preserve the rights of ordinary Americans." Oh, perish the thought. What if they're a pretty girl? I'm sure he'd change his mind. Soon the image of the beast will be a reality in the USA. I apologize for making that statement, by the way. I don't need to help a man continue on in sin. Shouldn't have said it. But still, the American people will see their nation helping the Vatican and Rome enforce its most evil mark ever known by mankind upon the foreheads and hands of billions, and they won't need a computer chip implant to do it either. They won't need a tattoo or a barcode. They will be able to get literally billions sealed for hell by one simple method. It's the exact same method that Nebuchadnezzar used in his day. All you need to do is agree with the governing authorities that the law of God can be superseded by the law of man. That's all you got to do. That will be the one and only easiest global agreement ever made in the history of mankind. The agreement of billions will declare to their very own Creator that they don't believe His word is truth, plain and simple. And they will be sealed for eternity as not worthy of life eternal. Fact is, many so-called Christian organizations are already doing this. And well, not doing this, but actually doing things that allow the beast's desires to get reality, to get it quickened, to get that reality quickened. I reported back on my site in 2002 how the religious leaders were conned into accepting hate crime legislation to safeguard religion. I've got a page dedicated to this in the warnings section of the website. It's entitled Hating the Christian. I did a radio broadcast on this topic back on February 22nd of this year. Want to know the real agenda behind the hate crimes bill? See my March 20th, 2000 Truth Provided newsletter entitled, Is Preaching the Gospel Now a Hate Crime? They want to stop those that share real truth from preaching because Satan knows that it will affect many. He is hoping for a landslide decision to go along with his agenda. Fact is, the elect cannot be deceived, but he's deceived enough himself enough to think they can be. So, how far can this hate crimes lobbying go? Did our religious leaders mess up? Well, of course. Yes, they did. The government officials of our land now use the 9/11 terrorist attacks as a way to publicly speak their opinions regarding religious issues all the time. Will they flip-flop and proclaim that people of faith are deadly to society? And if you speak out against the U.S. government from a pulpit, they're going to remove your tax-free status? You actually have people right now. There are 100 volunteers for the U.S. government. I just reported on this on my urgent breaking news page on the website. There are spies in the churches right now listening to what your pastor's saying because it's an election year. And if you say something wrong, the next article I'm going to throw up on the site shows how they will remove your tax-free status. That's been a trap in the beginning. That 501c3, it's been a trap all along. If you're a church, you don't need that 501c3 in the first place. Well, we got Rich on the phone here from Florida. Thanks for waiting, and welcome to the program.
Hey, Brother Nick. This is Rick from Florida, and I love to listen to your broadcast. Look forward to it very much and enjoy it. And I just wanted to mention about the Jewish folks there in the third temple that's going to be built. That is true, right? They're building it, right?
Oh yeah. They actually tried to start building it. I think about a year or so ago, and then all of a sudden this water started bubbling up from underneath, and it prevented them from putting in the foundation, so they stopped.
Yeah, and I understand that they have red heifers and everything. I mean,
oh yeah,
really,
they're ready to go. They got the plans. They know what to. In fact, I don't know, about 2-3 years ago, I found this one DVD where it had this software on there to allow you to see what the third temple will look like inside and out. And I purchased it. The only problem is I was using Windows XP at the time, so it couldn't have been that long ago. And I was using Windows 2000. That's right. I was using 2000, and the software wouldn't work unless it was 98 and down, like backwards, But I can get glimpses, and I could get in there, and I could move around and see, but it just wouldn't work properly. So I got my money back, of course. But the thing is, they already have the plans all laid out. They're going to build this thing.
That's incredible, and I'm under the impression that they're looking forward to a David Ben-Ami and not Jesus.
Oh yeah, exactly. They don't want anything to do with Jesus. They hate Jesus Christ. I mean, that's the problem with. Well, there are some Messianic Jews, of course, that don't hate him, that have found the truth, but the grand majority of those Jews, well, probation ended for them at the end of the 490-year prophecy. It ended for them, so they're bound to be a little bit problematic in that regard.
Well, listen, I don't want to get you off track, Brother Nicholas. We love to listen to you. I'm taping you tonight, matter of fact, and I want to thank you very much for everything, and God bless you and your ministry.
Thank you so much, Rick. You take care, brother. God bless, and say hi to everybody.
Will do. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. Well, that was nice. But yeah, that's true. That's absolutely, positively true. They are going to rebuild that temple. And they did try to start doing it, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago. And they had this, the Lord stopped them or what, but all of a sudden this water, this spring water just started bubbling up where they were trying to put the foundation. And it literally stopped them in their tracks. They couldn't continue. And then they also had some financial things, too, that happened. But they're going to do it. They're going to build it. So, again, how far can the hate crimes lobbying go? And did our religious leaders mess up? Well, they did. And will they flip-flop? I mean, first, in 1 minute you got the U.S. government making public religious statements, and will they flip-flop and proclaim that people of faith are deadly to society? I mean, 1 minute they're saying that you got to be Christ-like and gentle, and the next minute they're saying if you are Christ-like, you're deadly to society. Well, back in May of 2002, the governor of Virginia did just that. Here, I got this article from Rusty Pugh, wrote it May 22nd, 2002 for the Agape Press. He says, a pro-family activist says the governor of Virginia, Joe Glover, speaks that people of faith are a threat to the world. Just 1 day after earning praises from religious leaders for signing In God We Trust legislation, Virginia Governor Mark Warner made an anti-religious remark during a college graduation ceremony. An Associated Press article quotes Warner telling University of Virginia graduates, one of the greatest threats facing our world comes from those who believe they are acting out of God's will, no matter what religion they practice. Some are still confused, I'm sure, as to how this hate crime situation ties in with the Vatican and Rome. Well, check out this next article. And remember, the Pope and Islam, in their extreme friendly relationship, is this ecumenical group hug paying off for both the Pope and Arafat? I think so. Headline, Christians accused of inciting hatred. I've gone over this before, but what it actually was Catch the Fire Ministries was incited for hatred against the Islamic faith because they had some study or conference and they mentioned some things about the Quran. They said they didn't make any such statements, but they went ahead and they were legally attacked for it. The Christian ministry states they did not make the statement, but will it matter? No. Fact is, many of us will be thrown behind bars for not making statements as well. They will simply lie and say we did certain crimes. We will be persecuted by Rome and its friends the world over. It's no mistake the Roman beast would pick the Muslim as a friend. Like the Catholics, the Muslims are now over 1 billion strong, and their doctrines have no problems with killing people for their God. Their lies about you and me will be seen as truth by Catholic governments of the world. And when they are joined with a little over 1 billion Catholics repeating the same lies, well, do I need to illustrate the obvious? I think that's pretty obvious what's going to happen. And one last thing. Do you think Catholic theologians, deacons, priests, lay people, and just plain Catholics feel that torture and murders of millions by their church was a good or bad thing? Well, if you go to the question and answer page on the EWTN Catholic website regarding that very question, oops, wait a second, they deleted that page because of the statements made by their priests and doctors of divinity. However, I do have a copy of those statements on my Evils of EWTN page in the RCC Exposed section of the website. These Catholics, running the mainstream as well as televised EWTN Catholic ministry, actually feel it was an ultimate good to burn people at the stake, and they're saying this in modern day. It's best for one to die than all. The same thing they said about Christ, and the same thing they said about all those people they killed before. And the main reason I got back on this thing about this guillotine situation is about this next article. It's an interview with Fernand Meissonier, or Meissonier, he's French. Discusses the interview discusses his career as a professional executioner in Algeria. This is from September of 2002. I just found the article recently. Fernand Meissonier has me by the head. This is how the article goes. Has me by the head. With 4 meaty fingers behind each of my ears, he is tugging me forward out of my seat. It doesn't actually hurt, but the effect is certainly unsettling. That's the way they do it. You've got to make sure you don't hold the guy too near the neck, or you could have an accident. It happened. There were people who lost 2 or 3 fingers, he says. Mr. Meissonier is, or was, an executioner. In 21 years, from 1947, he helped to guillotine the heads off of more than 200 people. The vast majority of them were Arabs in French Algeria. During the war, there he was taking off 5 or 6 a month. He knows what it is like to hold a human head. He has seen the gore. The blood spurts like 2 glasses of red wine chucked 3 meters. He says with a quick double flick of the wrist, he is, in Europe at least, a last link with an ancient, almost mythological profession, the people's killer. He has never spoken publicly about the experiences before, but at 72 he is ill with cancer, and this month he is bringing out a book, An Executioner's Tale, in which he answers all the questions. My Sonia Sr. would receive a call at the bar from the prosecutor's office, and that evening he would pack the guillotine into boxes and set off by lorry to the prison in Algiers, Oran, or Constantine. There they would erect the machine in the courtyard and rest till dawn. Fernand started off as a junior assistant with the task of tying, now listen how they did this, they would tie the convict's ankles and thighs with fishing wire. Then his hands were handcuffed behind his back and his elbows trussed forward. This has the effect of making the head stick out, which was what they wanted. He says you must never give the guy time to think, because if you do, he starts moving his head around, and then you have mess-ups. The blade comes down through his jaw, and you have to use a butcher knife to finish it off. So I would say, go, Father, and crack. The head is in my hands, and I put it in the bucket. It is an exorbitant power to kill your fellow man. The whole thing would happen like in a fast film. They bring in the first one, and then the second, and in 20 seconds, 2 people are decapitated. You come out with an incredible, listen to what he says here. He goes, you come out with an incredible sense of power. Only God can do that. No comment there. It has been rumored that this man is a Roman Catholic. If anyone has proof of that fact, I would greatly appreciate an email from you. Just go to my website, go to the Contact Us page. But think of it. Rome has joined with the Muslim. Muslims are beheading people on television now. We have reports that there are still people alive today that are employed as executioners that still use guillotines. It has been reported that there are over 30,000 guillotines on U.S. soil at this moment. Governing officials have been lobbying for years to try and convince the American people, as well as Congress, that we need to start using guillotines. Big money is most assuredly to be made regarding the beheading of people by harvesting their organs. And people still believe Revelation chapter 20 verse 4 is a joke, because it speaks of people being beheaded in these modern days. You know, it's a pretty scary thing to mock the Lord thy God. Prophecy is not something to be, to joke about or something to deny. It's there for a reason. Thanks for listening. This is Nicholas, signing off from Presence of God Ministry. Stop by the website. For all that I shared here and more, it's at www.remnantofgod.org. Thanks go out to FirstAmendmentRadio.com for allowing the present truth to be broadcast for you freely. Don't forget, catch the rebroadcast of this show on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Central Time. See you next time, everybody. God bless.
Everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people, and you become a slave, you become a serf to these people. That's their goal, that's their intention. How do I put it? It was like, what do you care about them? What do you care about those people? What difference does it make to you? Take care of your own life. Do the best you can for you and your family. What do the rest of the people mean to you? They don't mean anything to you. They're just serfs. They're just people. You know, it was just a lack of caring. You know, and that's just not who I was. It was just sort of like cold. You know, it was just like cold. You know, and I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? What's the end goal? When he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society.
I'm not talking really about backwards masking, I'm talking really about backwards messages. In fact, one way to do it, which wouldn't require demons or higher intelligences to intercede, would be just to take straight words, take 7 or 8 words in a song, and reverse them. And then when you played it backwards, you would hear those words. But when you heard it forwards, what would you hear? You'd hear something backwards. It wouldn't make sense. So when people talk about how backwards masking is done in the studio, yeah, that kind of backwards masking is done in the studio. No problem. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when you hear music and lyrics forward, and then you hear those same lyrics backwards, and it's a message forward, and those same words are a message backwards. Okay? And we're not talking about 1 or 2 words. We're not talking about something like the cat and playing it backwards and trying to get something like tack backwards and something out of the. We're talking about sometimes over 15 words straight. We're talking on Stairway to Heaven right around 30 words. Okay? And we're not only talking about that, we're talking about a song that wasn't engineered to be heard backwards, but came right from the spirit world automatically. Okay? And then we're talking about if you wanted to make lyrics backwards on a song, you're going to mess up that song forward pretty bad, right? Well, Stairway to Heaven is the most popular song in rock and roll. So this destroys any kind of argument that comes against it. And what destroys it more is the lyric forward often has everything to do with the lyric backwards. And to take it even further, you can hear a lot of these same things on live albums backwards. Because it's the demonic spirits using these human beings. Do you understand that? So let's listen to it. Remember, first of all, that they were invoking Satan, that they got it from Satan, and listen to what you hear backwards. Forward. Your stairway lies on the whispering wind. Forward it says, and your stairway lies on the whispering wind. Backwards it says, because I live with Satan. Listen carefully. Raise your hands if you heard that. Quite clear, quite obvious. There's a lot more. Backwards it says, here's to my sweet Satan. Did you hear that? Listen carefully. It says, I want to live it backwards, like the Zep, whose power is Satan. Did you hear that? Then it says, he will give you 666.
Was that I got 7 years in which the devil would give me anything I wanted. He'd given me wine, women, song, dope, power, you name it, I'd have it. And at the end of those 7 years, he got to kill me and take me to hell. What a deal. Anybody want to sign up? Yeah, you see, you got to understand something. The satanic doctrine here is that hell is not what we believe it is, or what the Bible teaches it is. The satanic doctrine is that hell is this incredible party.
Jim Morrison, too, was into Aleister Crowley. And right here, I want to show you a picture on the back of one of his albums. And here you see Jim Morrison, and under him you see a little statue of Aleister Crowley. And Jim Morrison, too, was into demonism and admitted that he was possessed by spirits. He will give you 666. Big deal. The mark of the beast will come out. People will take it on their right hand or their forehead, and then all of a sudden they'll get grievous sores on their right hand, and they'll say, hey, what's going on? It's not working. There's some kind of reaction to this mark. And then before you know it, according to Revelation 14, everybody that takes the mark of the beast will be damned in fire and brimstone, it says, forever. And the smoke of their torment rises up forever and ever. Big deal. It's a big deal in this sense. The people that take the mark of the beast, the people that are rejecting Jesus right now, are not going to make it into God's kingdom. And we need to reach people and say, hey, the scriptures say, Jesus said, except you repent, you shall all likewise perish. We need to turn to Him wholeheartedly. Where are you turning at this time? Who are you following? Not to follow Jesus is to follow Satan according to the Word of God.
And here's a group of neurons right here.
And at the University of Southern California, Theodore Berger has shown that brain cells called neurons can grow onto microchips and communicate with them.
The capability exists for building computer chips that act just like nerve cells, and we're developing the capability for interfacing those computer chips with the brain.
And Ray Kurzweil sees a day when microscopic computers will make all kinds of learning as easy as downloading.
You would be able to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
Is it possible that you could download information into one of these chips? And stop me if this is silly, and give somebody instant knowledge.
It's not.
In the 1960s, Professor Jose Delgado took a normally hostile bull and implanted electrodes into its brain. Electrodes that could be activated by a radio transmitter. His objective was to see if stimulation of the bull's midbrain could short-circuit the rage signals, stopping the bull before it reached the matador. After the bull had recovered from the implantation and in mid-charge, the button was pressed. The bull's aggression ceased instantly. A clearer experiment was performed with cats. In this classic example, the hypothalamus, the rhythm maker, was implanted with electrodes. Could it be responsible not just for rhythms, but also for rage? The switch is turned. Then the switch is turned off. So indeed, the hypothalamus does control certain types of aggression.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over. Can brain scans be used to determine whether a person is inclined toward criminality or violent behavior? You will rule on that.
But that is not the point. If you claim to profess Jesus Christ as your Lord, as your Savior, as the God of your salvation, then why doesn't hell bother you?
On the site of the demons. Besides what has already been mentioned, the terrible appearance of the evil spirits makes death yet more alarming to us. It is the opinion of many of the fathers that everyone when expiring sees the evil enemy. How appalling this sight is, and with what terror it must inspire the dying exceeds the power of words to declare. It is related of Brother Giles that one day, when he was praying in his cell, the devil appeared to him in so frightful a shape that the brother lost the power of speech and thought his last hour had come. As his lips could not utter a sound, he raised his heart in humble supplication to God, and the apparition vanished. Afterwards, when relating what had befallen him to his brother monks, he trembled from head to foot as he described the hideous aspect of the adversary of mankind. Then going to St. Francis, he asked him this question: "Father, have you ever seen anything in this world, the sight of which was so horrible that it was enough to kill one to behold it?" And the saint replied, "I have indeed seen such a thing. It is none other than the devil, whose aspect is so loathsome that no one could gaze upon it even for a short time and live, unless God specially enabled him to do so." We read much of the same thing in the life of St. Catherine of Siena. She too declared that she would rather walk through a flaming fire than gaze for one instant at the devil. If the mere sight of the evil one is so appalling that the saints think it more intolerable than the pain of exposure to a burning fire, what, my God, must be the fear and horror of the damned, dwelling forever in the midst of countless fiends? How terrified would thou be if a mad dog were to suddenly spring upon thee, pull thee to the ground, and to begin to tear thee with his teeth? Do not imagine that the devil will
gentlemen, for another edition of Truth Frequency here on American Freedom Radio. This is your host, Chris Gio, and I'm joined as always by my lovely co-host, Cherie. And it is July 25th, 2010, and we have a great guest lined up for you this evening. The legend himself, Jordan Maxwell, will be rejoining us to discuss his recent trip to the Vatican and also how religion and astrotheology is impacting our nation. Now, for those of you who don't know Jordan, he's a veteran researcher of over 50 years. He's a master of esoteric and occult knowledge, whose areas of expertise include astrotheology, secret societies, and hidden Bible teachings and mysteries. And of course, my favorite, the truth behind modern religions. Now, that's a pretty interesting word there, religion. If you look it up, I looked it up on dictionary.com, so I can give you the exact meaning. It says a specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons or sects. So when we use the word religion throughout the broadcast, we're actually referring to the fundamental sets of beliefs and practices. Now, my biggest problem with religion, like any other group, is of course the groupthink involved. If you don't adhere to the beliefs, then you're either ridiculed, you're ignored, or just flat out excommunicated. And it's an institute of control, ladies and gentlemen. It's spiritual control. That's what it is, much like its partner, government, which actually comes from the Greek word gubernatio, which means to control, and the word ment, which means the word mind. So if you take a look at the original Latinized Greek, government means control of the mind. So I bet a lot of you didn't know that out there. And coincidentally, you know, as I was looking up the exact word for the definition of religion, or the exact word for word definition of religion, an article popped up on dictionary.com, and the article asked the question of the real meaning of the word amen, you know, what you say after a prayer. And very interesting article, because for years I've been telling people that the word amen is actually the name of an Egyptian god of life. And it's just amazing to see it right there on dictionary.com, which is a somewhat mainstream website. So when you hear Christians and Jews and Muslims all the same and do their prayers with amen, they are actually praying to an ancient Egyptian god. And the point is, ladies and gentlemen, that you have to, that we've all been deceived. I mean, we've all been deceived on many levels. And if I told you the truth right now in a few sentences, you'd probably turn off your radio right now. So for the next few weeks, we're going to have some great guests to talk about the true history of mankind, how we evolved, and how we've been influenced by, and if not directly manipulated by, alien beings. But we'll get more into that when we come back from the break with Jordan Maxwell. This is Truth Frequency with Chris and Cherie. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Truth Frequency on American Freedom Radio and Polygraph Radio. This is Chris and Cherie, of course, and joining us on the line, we have the legend himself, Jordan Maxwell. And I'm watching the chat room right now. You can join the chat at truthfrequencyradio.com if you'd like, but they're asking a question, who came first, God or religion? Well, God, of course, and then we made the religion after God made us. And then we started actually worshiping other beings instead of the true creator of the universe. But Cherie, why don't you go into Jordan's bio before we bring him on the line?
Okay. Jordan Maxwell has been uncovering these deep mysteries for over 5 decades and continues this past year with the documentary Moses the Lawgiver. His books and documentaries cover topics such as occult and religious philosophy. He has conducted dozens of intensive seminars, hosted his own radio talk shows, guested on more than 600 radio shows, and written, produced, and appeared in numerous television shows and documentaries, including 3 2-hour specials for CBS, as well as the Ancient Mystery series, all devoted to understanding ancient religions and their pervasive influence on world affairs today.
Jordan, it's a pleasure having you on the broadcast.
Well, thank you very much. Again, sorry that I missed last week. I don't know what to say. I feel very bad about missing the program, but I'm happy to be on with you again this week.
Oh, it's no problem. It's no problem. It's funny how the universe works, because we had a great broadcast last week. I'm sure this week gave you plenty of time to think about even more stuff that you wanted to put on the broadcast. So I think it's all going to work out for the best. Let me ask you this. You just got back from the Vatican. How was that trip out there?
Well, it was a very nice for me, but the Vatican, of course, is an incredible place. Kind of scary at night, but it was a beautiful trip through Switzerland, and I was there for a little over 6 weeks. and I'd like to go back. But anyway, the other problem I'm seeing is that we're getting a heavy feedback from your line.
Okay.
You call me back and do it again.
Yeah. We can give you a call right back. All right. Is that better?
I think so. Sounds good.
Very good. Very good.
Anyway, the Vatican is an incredible place. It's absolutely ludicrous with how much riches are right in your face in the Vatican. We had the opportunity to take the tour from the back. We had a tour guide that got us into the Vatican the unorthodox way. We went through the back door and were able to go through all kinds of places that a lot of the tourists don't go. And we saw the whole thing, but we were able to get into places where regular tourists are not going. So it was quite an experience seeing that much lavish power and money in your face. But a lot of people, I know that there were a lot of people there were amazed at the overwhelming awesomeness of the presence of the Vatican in Europe. And it is a very awesome presence. But most people don't know how it got to be where it is today. And when you start getting into the history of the Vatican and the history of the whole church in Europe, going back to the 3rd and 4th century A.D., and seeing what has happened to Europe and how the church became what it is today, that's a whole story in itself. A lot of people have no idea in the world, but they just know it was an old church, but they have no concept of how it got the power and the money and the influence that it has today. And that's what I'm very interested in having people know about.
Well,
where all of this stuff came from.
Take us on the journey. Where do we begin?
Well, at the time of Christianity, when Christianity first shows itself on the earth, it was in the Eastern world, not in the West. And in Rome, at the time of Christianity, the basic religion of the Roman Empire was called Mithraism. Mithraism, you can look it up in any good dictionary or encyclopedia, look up Mithraism, and it will tell you that was the main religion. There were many different religions in the Roman Empire, but that was the main Roman religion. It was, and Rome was pretty much the world of mankind in the Mediterranean area, and so it became known as the Roman Universal Religion. Well, universal in Latin is Catholic. Catholic simply means a universal. So the Roman Universal or Roman Catholic religion in the ancient Roman Empire was Mithraism. Mithra was a sun god who died and who was resurrected and had 12 followers and died for our sins, etc. And so all of the Mithraism teachings of the ancient Roman Empire became known as the Christian religion, and it became it kept the same title of the Roman Universal Religion, but it just kind of took Mithra out of the picture and put someone else in as the Messiah. But all the teachings of Mithraism is today what we call Christianity. But unfortunately, so many people don't do that kind of homework. They don't study where things come from. And this is why I've said so many times that with all of the troubles going on in the world and all the violence and bloodshed and wars and all the things which are destroying our civilizations on the earth, religion is behind all of it, because ultimately Europe has been dominated by the Vatican or by Rome. I should say Rome has dominated Europe for about 3,200 years and 2,000 years, and so for Christianity. And so we're talking about, say, 3,200 years, Rome and Christianity has dominated Europe. And Europe has, of course, dominated the earth. So the earth has been dominated by Europe, and Europe's dominated by the church. And the church is actually a very old, ancient institution that Rome picked up from the pagan nations before it. So what we have today is one of the greatest, most powerful cults on the earth. It was the cult of Mithra. And the cult of Mithra became the cult of Christianity. But within the scriptures, there is a hidden, when you get into the life of Jesus and get into the history of the concepts of Jesus and what he did and where he went, etc., there is obviously an encoded message in the New Testament, just as there is in the Old Testament. There's an encoded or symbolic story. And I think the story is absolutely astounding once you see the outline, like the movie. I watched a movie just recently. It struck me. It was called A Beautiful Mind, in which this doctor was able to see pattern recognitions in newspapers and magazines where there were encoded messages. And that's exactly what you have to do with the New Testament. You have to look at it as an encoded symbolic story. And that story is very, very valuable. It's very impressive and important. But the church has taken that encoded story and put it into a historical perspective and made it into a church. So I'm seeing it's totally different. The spiritual story of the New Testament, story of Jesus, has nothing whatsoever to do with the business or the corporation or the dominance of a political power called Rome. It's two different subjects completely. So while I'm fascinated and I really am interested in the hidden story of Jesus, on the other hand, I am totally turned off on the corporate world of big business, big churches, big money. And the Vatican, of course, is a political empire. It is political. It is a state among states.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Jesus actually exist, and then they took his story, or was the whole story just made up completely?
I think, it's just my opinion, that's based on 50 years of looking at this subject, I don't believe for a moment that Jesus actually existed as a man. I don't believe any of the writers of the New Testament existed. I think the entire New Testament story is a encoded symbolic metaphor. That's a metaphor for something very, very interesting and very important, but it was hidden in a metaphor we call the New Testament. So I don't believe Jesus as a man actually existed. But actually, that's not important, because the metaphor of the story, which I'm seeing, is far more important as to whether Jesus himself actually lived or not. It's the story in the Bible that's important in the New Testament. The New Testament, as I said, is a metaphor. Well, so is the Old Testament. The Old Testament is filled with symbolisms and innuendos, but especially symbols in relation to commerce and ownership and law. The Old Testament is a very, very powerful law document. It deals with courts and law and ownership of people, and it's a commercial document. And I see the New Testament as an answer to that Old Testament commercial document. I see the New Testament as remedy at law, how to get out from under that Old Testament law, commercial ownership of people, ownership of the humans. So I don't see the Bible as coming from God. I see the Bible, both Old and New Testament, as documents put into the world politically and religiously, but especially politically, by very powerful secret societies and fraternal orders. And we know from history, anyone who bothers to read about the history of Europe knows it's just crammed filled with secret societies and Knights Templars and all of the different fraternal orders operating within the Catholic Church. And there's some really serious stuff going on in that department, and secret societies operating in the Vatican. You have Opus Dei, Propaganda Due, P2 Lodge of Freemasonry in the Vatican. You have the Knights of Malta. Then you have a huge amount of smaller secret societies, fraternal orders operating in governments around Europe and around the world that are dedicated to the overthrow of different governments for the Vatican. So it's an interesting story. As a matter of fact, there's a movie Disney came out about 4 or 5 years ago with the latest Zorro movie. And in the movie Zorro, you can get it still today and watch it. The whole movie of Zorro is about how secret societies connected to the Vatican were trying to overthrow the state of California when it was founded. And it shows the secret societies meeting, their Masonic symbols and emblems, and listen to what they're talking about. They're talking about the sovereignty of the American people, the sovereignty of the California state citizen cannot be allowed, and that the governments and the secret societies of Europe will not allow this to go on. This idea of sovereignty and freedom of the American people has to be overthrown. Europe is not going to stand for this. And I thought that's interesting. It's right there in the Disney movie, Zorro. So there's a lot of this kind of knowledge about the secret orders within the Vatican and all around the Vatican and operating for the Vatican all over the world, in Germany and Europe, in Asia, Africa. So the Vatican is a very powerful institution, but it's the reason why it's so powerful and the reason why it's so pervasive is because it's Rome. It's the Rome of the Caesars. And if you go back to the Roman Empire, you will find out it was a very powerful, dominating, oppressive system of government.
Well, let me back up.
What we still have.
Let me back up for a second, because we just made a huge jump from two different ideas. First, we were talking about Mithra worship, which is, of course, worship of the sun, and that's why Christianity practices their holy day on Sunday. They don't even try to hide it. But then we jump into commerce. So originally, were they actually worshiping the sun, or...
No. Then once you get into once you have accepted the idea that a particular institution, man-made institution, represents God, this is why, of course, kings have a divine right of kings in Europe, a divine right of kings. What are you talking about, divine right? Who can bestow a divine right on the king? Well, it's the Vatican who anoints kings in Europe to be kings and princes because they have a divine right, meaning the Pope speaks for God. And therefore, if the Pope speaks for God, if he anoints you, then you have a divine right to rule. Well, he can just as easily remove you by divine right. So once you see, and once we accept that the Pope has absolute sovereign authority over all mankind, which is what the Vatican has said over and over in their documents, that the Pope has absolute sovereign control over all life on the earth, man and animal, period. Because Jesus was given the earth by God, and but Jesus is not here, so he needs someone to step in to own the earth till he comes back, and so that word is a vicar, and therefore the Pope is called the Vicar of Christ. He stands in for Jesus because Jesus is not here, but God has given the earth to Jesus, so therefore the Pope will, until Jesus come back, the Pope will himself own the earth and all life on it, because he has a divine right from his God in Rome.
So the Pope is so the Popes basically are divine babysitter?
Yeah, that's it. Divine babysitters for the earth and all life on it. All animal life, all life in the sea, all life of humans, all life on the earth is in the hands of God. And God gave the earth to his Son, Jesus Christ, the Son God. But Jesus is not here right now. And so until he gets back, he has to have someone take care of the property. And so anyone who would step in for a Messiah is referred to in Latin as a vicar. A vicar is one who stands in for. Well, so the Pope is standing in for Jesus right now. So whatever he says the law is, that's what the law is. And whoever he anoints as king, that's God speaking. And so you can see where the corruption, because one of the British statesmen said, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, today all over Europe and the world, our power structures are absolutely corrupt. America is probably the most corrupt of all of them.
Well, who is the
and
God?
All the governments of the world are profoundly dark and occult, corrupted systems of finance, money, political power, violence, and the Vatican, of course, rises as king over all of Europe. So
now, who is the God they worship, though? Is it gold, oil, and dollars? Actually, you know what?
That's good. I like that.
Let's take a quick break, and I'm going to get to that question when we come back. We're speaking with Jordan Maxwell, ladies and gentlemen. TruthFrequencyRadio.com is our website. And welcome back to Truth Frequency on American Freedom Radio. We are speaking with the legend himself, Jordan Maxwell. And we're talking about the Vatican and the power which is Rome and who the Pope represents. And before we got before we got hit with a break, I was asking Jordan a question. Jordan, the question was, who is the Vatican actually representing? And I made the comment. Actually, I have to credit it to Danny because he's the one that told me God, gold, oil, and dollars. But who are they actually worshiping?
The Vatican is actually dominated by the worship of an ancient god called Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. Dagon was referred to as a fish god because he came out of the sea, which goes all the way back to Sumeria and into the ancient writings of some of the religious movements of the ancient and prehistoric world. This god who came out of the sea, Dagon, and the symbols of that the Pope wears is of the god Dagon. My whole family was Catholic. I came from a Catholic family, and my mother had an uncle who worked in the Vatican at the time when I was growing up as a little kid. And so I'm not condemning the Catholic people. I'm just talking about the actual organization that we call the Vatican, how it got to be what it is and where it came from. So Rome has always been involved with the worship of Dagon. And Dagon, as I said, was a fish god. This is why the Pope's mitre is a fish head. And it's very obvious when you look at the mitre from the side, it's a fish head. And all of the symbols, like today, even in Protestant Christianity, which is actually just the offspring of the original Dagon worship, the Protestant movement was not happy with the way that Rome was running things. It did not want to change the religion and drop the worship of Dagon and all the other silly nonsense that Rome was into religiously. The Protestant world movement did not want to drop any of that because that stuff works. It was a winner. I mean, the crowds loved it. So they didn't want to change and do anything spectacular in changing the worship of Dagon. They just didn't like the way Rome was running things, so they broke off and started a new phase of the old Roman religion. They called it Protestantism because they were protesting against the way Rome ran Europe. So today, even the Protestant churches of the world are worshiping Dagon, and the worship of this ancient god is everywhere. And this is why even being a fish god, this is why on the back of Christians' cars you will see a fish symbol. We're told that was a symbol of early Christianity, was a fish symbol. Mm-hmm. Well, of course it was the symbol for Christianity because Christianity was the worship of Dagon, or in astrological terms, Pisces. Pisces was always symbolized by a fish or two fish. And all through the Catholic Church and all through Protestant churches, everywhere you will see Jesus with two fish. And because Jesus, or the story of Jesus, is based on Dagon, the fish god, that represented and was connected to the worship of Pisces, the fish.
Well, he fed the crowds.
That's what Jesus called the great fisherman.
He fed the crowds with a loaf of bread and two fish.
And two fish. The two fish is the symbol of Pisces, the two fish. And in Luke 22:10 in the Bible, in the New Testament, when Jesus is going to be commemorating what they call the Last Supper, the last meal, the Passover meal, the apostles asked Jesus, and this is a symbolic metaphor, but the apostles asked Jesus, where are we going to go now that you're going to die? Now that you're going to leave us, where are we going to go? And he says, back, go into the city, and you will see a man with a water pitcher. A man carrying a water pitcher. Go into the house of the man with the water pitcher. Well, anybody that knows astrology knows the next sign after Pisces is Aquarius, always symbolized by a man with the water pitcher. And so it was a symbolic story that the sun, that thing that comes up in the morning that brings light into the world, the sun was in the age of Pisces under Jesus. But now that Pisces is leaving the world, there's a new constellation coming on the earth. The new one is the age of Aquarius. So the sun now tells his 12 helpers, the 12 apostles, which are actually the 12 months of the year, or the 12 signs of the zodiac. And so the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 followers of God's Son, ask him, where are we to go if you're going to leave us now in the age of Pisces, the two fish? Where are we going to go? And he says, go into the city where you will see a man with a water pitcher. Go into the house of the man with the water pitcher. Well, that's the house of Aquarius. So I'm saying that the entire story of the New Testament is a metaphor. It's a symbolic story explaining the whole concept of the astrological story, which is far back as you can go in history, the most ancient story on the earth is called astrotheology. And all people who have studied religion know, even the priest and the clergy, they know about astrotheology and about the beginnings of Christianity and where this stuff has come from. They know that. But they have a job to do. They're being paid a salary. Their life depends on. They're in an organization. Just because you're working for Sears or General Motors does not necessarily mean you love General Motors, but it's your job. So if you're going to talk about cars in public, you talk about the boss and the company you work for. You may not like it, but at least they are your boss, and they're the ones that you're getting your paycheck from. And so all the clergy, almost all the clergy I've talked to privately, they say, yeah, we know the whole thing is based on astrology and the astrological symbols of the sun and the 12 signs of the zodiac and all of that. It's overwhelmingly obvious to anybody that studies it. The entire superstructure of Western civilization is based on occult astrology, occult symbols, mystical symbols, words and terms. But the masses of the people have no idea in the world and the reason why the people in Western civilization do not know any of this, and it's foreign to hearing, those people hearing me, this stuff is totally foreign. And I understand that. It's because this kind of subject, which I have been looking at for 50 years, this kind of subject has nothing to do with basketball, football, tennis, golf balls, soccer, nothing to do with all the silly games that our masters have given us kids to play with. Give them a ball and let them go out and play so that they don't think too much about what the bosses are doing behind the scenes. Well, I never bought into this, go out and play ball, even as a child. I didn't want to go out and play ball when friends were coming over to visit my family, and they would tell us kids, go out and play ball. That, to me, even as a kid, I knew. It means the adults want to talk about something, and they don't want you children hearing it. I wanted to stay. I would always tell my dad, I don't want to go out and play ball. I want to know what you guys are talking about in the front room when the women are out in the kitchen. I want to hear what the men are talking about, because that's where the action is. And so I don't want to be out watching a ball game while the people who claim to be our masters and own us are playing games with our lives behind the scenes and manipulating us, and we are so stupid we buy into it. I have never bought into stupidity and ignorance. I've always known that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Well, they did that even back in Rome to distract everybody. They would have big games at the Colosseum.
That's right. We still have it in L.A. Everybody goes to the Colosseum. And we have cage fighting and martial arts and, all the prize fightings and wrestling, WrestleMania. All of this is entertainment for the masses who are nothing more than maritime admiralty products based on the Holy See. When you understand what the Holy See, where the Pope sits, is called the Holy See. The word see in that context is a chair, the holy chair, where the Bible says that the dark forces of the world sit on the holy chair that's overseeing the seas of the world. The seas of the world are the people. The blood of humans is everywhere. So the Holy See is actually the holy institution that is guiding the whole human race. And Vatican has been very heavily involved in Russia, in China, in Japan, all over Asia, all over Africa. The Vatican is behind so many of the political movements, the Knights of Malta, the Knights, the Masonic Order of Knights, throughout the Roman Empire have been behind the founding of governments, revolutionary governments, especially Central and South America, Brazil, Argentina. That's why South America and Central America is just covered with Nazi secret societies, Opus Dei, to name a few, Propaganda Due, P2. All of these secret societies operating behind world governments all are directly being influenced by some kind of a very powerful presence in the world that is in position of authority so that millions of people follow and never ask any questions. And once in a while, like in ancient history and through history, once in a while there will be someone who will stand up and say, what is all this stuff really all about? Who's really running the Vatican? Where is all this stuff, who's really financing the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler? What is the connection between Hitler, the Nazi movement, and the Vatican? Because, boy, there is a big one. Then you've got to find out, what is the connection between the Vatican and the rise of communism in the world? Is there an actual factual connection between the Vatican and Nazism, communism, and the fascism? Well, once you start going down that road, now you've got to ask, what is the connection between America and the Vatican that you don't know anything about when it's right in your face? In the ancient Roman Empire, Rome was ruled by the Senate. Well, we have a Senate. And the Vatican Dome represented something called the Domus. The Vatican Dome is the model for the Washington, D.C. Dome. Life magazine, I still have the magazine, did a whole article on the Vatican Dome as the model for the United States Capitol Dome. And how the history book said that Caesar each morning would go up on the hill. And so Caesar ruled the Senate from what is referred to as Capitol Hill. In Rome, there is such a hill that's called Capitoline Hill or Capitol Hill. And that was a seat of power where the Senate was located. Well, that's today. We have a Senate up on the hill. And we have presidents who are like the Vatican, like standing in for the Vatican. They are like God. They think themselves to be absolute, divinely inspired gods. When America was supposed to be the land of the free and home of the brave, we're not free or brave. We are maritime admiralty products of people who are crawling on their knees to the Vatican. And we have a Senate, and we know that our American judicial system, the laws in America, our governmental systems, our finances, we know, Americans know, in a gut level, it's all corrupt. It's all mafiosi, gangsters. It's all money, buying and selling people. It's all a very violent and dirty world of international politics and big money. We finally figured that out. Well, I knew that 50 years ago, listening to my uncle and listening to my family. So once you understand how corrupt America really is and how far gone we are as a great republic, we no longer have the freedoms that we started out with. And
Jordan, hold that thought. We're coming up to another break. We'll be right back. We're speaking with Jordan Maxwell. And welcome back to Truth Frequency on American Freedom Radio. And we are speaking with Jordan Maxwell, talking about the Vatican, the powers behind governments, and how governments are given their power by divine. So, Jordan, let me ask you this, though. Let me jump back a little bit, because we were talking about the power behind the Vatican, but there seemed to have been a little split there at one point in time with the Knights Templar. Now, the Vatican, at least from what I understand, the Vatican created the Knights Templar to be basically their assassins, and then they turned on the Knights Templar.
Oh, well, because the Knights Templar turned on the Vatican. They felt, it seems to be, as what happened is that the Templars were doing all the dirty work and collecting all the jewels and material treasures from the raping the earth and giving it to the Vatican. And they decided, why are we doing that? Why don't we just keep it ourselves? The hell with the Pope and the hell with the church. We'll just do it ourselves because we're the ones. Well, that's the same kind of thinking that goes on with the mob, with the mafia. You know, you're out there on the street and all of a sudden some of the soldiers begin to think, why are we feeding the old man? Why don't we just start our own movement, our own operation? We call it international bankers. We don't need the Vatican. And now all of a sudden there's a rift in the great mob rule because the old man is losing power over the young Turks, and the young guys are coming in who are doing the dirty work. They want to keep all the stuff for themselves. So there's always going to be this kind of infighting and internecine battles going on in underworld organizations, mafia, La Cosa Nostra. There's always going to be this kind, and of course mafia is Italian. So that's what the whole story of Godfather 3, if you go and get the third in the series of Godfather, you'll see the mafia directly connected to the Vatican in the Vatican, dealing directly with the Holy Father, dealing directly with the Pope. And it's an extraordinary story of how it's right there in your face in the movies. Francis Ford Coppola, in his third movie, Godfather 3, is telling you a lot right there in the movie, in your face. But so many people see it, and it's just entertainment. They don't make the connection. It's very obvious to me.
Well,
it's always been very obvious.
The Knights Templar, weren't they the first banking system?
Yes, they were, absolutely, and they are still the banking system today. They are still, in fact, the major bankers of the world belong to the Fraternal Order of Knights Templar, and it's a Masonic operation throughout Europe and ultimately throughout the world. This is why all banking systems, I mean, I do a whole thing, and you've probably heard it many times, a whole thing on the banking system and where the words come from. Why do you have a bank? What is investment? What does that word mean? Where does it come from? Where does it come from? And where do courts come from? You begin to see how the Vatican dominates our American court system. So if you don't like the courts, if you don't like the crooked politicians, if you're not happy with all of the heinous treason, high crimes and treason against the Republic, which is going on right now at what we call Washington, D.C., then you had better look at the concept of the Senate, Capitol Hill. You had better look on each side of the podium where the speakers in the House stand to give speeches, where you will see that the fasci is about an 8-foot high symbols on each side of the podium where the president stands to give his State of the Union message, and you will see two Roman fasci directly out of the old ancient Roman system of fascist government. Is right here in the Senate, right here in America. It's actually on the seal of the United States Senate, has two fasci, the symbol of world fascism in the United States Roman Senate. So Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman system of Mithra or Dagon, is now dominating the American system. We don't have anything happening in this country which is American. You have two political parties, and the reason why you have only two is because the eagle, the American eagle, is the same as the symbol for Rome. The Roman symbol in the ancient Roman Empire was the eagle. So we still have the Roman eagle, but eagles only have two wings. left wing and right wing. They only have two wings. This is why in America you can only have a left wing and right wing government, because the entire system that we are operating under in America is a Roman fascist system.
Well, you can take that symbol. You can take that.
It has totally destroyed our American republic. We're so incredibly ignorant, incredibly uninformed, and profoundly unread. We've been entertained with all of our games and alcohol and all of our entertainment, never realizing for a moment that the entire superstructure of America is a fascist Roman system under the Vatican, meeting up on Capitol Hill with the Senate. The entire superstructure of America is a very filthy and dirty system coming out of the ancient Roman Empire, and we're still today in America, both Catholic churches and Protestant churches, on our knees worshiping Dagon, the fish god, and Mithra, the old ancient sun god. And I'm telling you that as long as America is on its knees to its masters, its Roman masters, worshiping the old ancient Roman gods, and then we have the audacity to actually ask God for protection and divine guidance, it's ludicrous on the face of it. America is lost because she is crawling on her knees to her masters of Rome and have no idea in the world what's going on. Americans are not very well read. They're profoundly ignorant when it comes to law and how governments work, how banks work. I'm just amazed at how far gone this great republic has lost all of its freedoms, its dignity, its honor. It's lost everything, and our Roman masters sit in the Vatican in absolute opulence and luxury, dominating Europe, dominating the world, and in fact dominating our great republic, and the people of our country have no concept at all in what's going on at all. All we know is we are dying, we're starving, our republic is crashing, our money is corrupt, our politicians are corrupt. You're looking at the fall of the Roman Empire, and yet the most incredible part of this is the people love it. You will never get the people to understand who their real enemy is. The American people love crawling on their knees to their masters. They love it. They cannot get enough of the Vatican, the Holy Father. When the Holy Father comes here, everybody falls all over themselves to get next to him, to touch him. So I'm just saying we're in a mess, and because we're so profoundly ignorant.
Let's take another quick break, ladies and gentlemen. We are speaking with Jordan Maxwell. We're going to have a longer segment when we come back, and we'll get to some of your questions from the chat room. TruthFrequencyRadio.com is the website. We are speaking with Jordan Maxwell. We have a couple of questions from the chat room, Jordan, if you don't mind taking a few. The first one is...
Before we do that, I would just say, if you go to my website, jordanmaxwell.com, and go to the button at the top of the page that says What's New, and scroll down and you will see two videos that I highly suggest. One is a video, one is not. But two products I would suggest if you're really interested in this story. The two products I have that are filled with this kind of stuff. It's called The Priesthood of the Elis. The Priesthood of the Elis is a DVD which is actually 3 books, old typewritten manuscripts, but they're 3 different books written by the same man, not by me. And these 3 books I put together as to one book on a DVD called Priesthood of the Elis, in which this is a very old publication back in the 30s. And but what this guy has done, and I found it to be absolutely fascinating, is he took all of the words and terms that Rome used and the church has used during the Middle Ages, during the Dark Ages, all the Protestant church symbols and words and terms, and showed where they came from, the etymology of the words and the foundation of the concepts, showing them to be maritime admiralty concepts, the way the church was set up, how the Knights Templar set up the banking and words and terms and symbols and emblems. It's an incredible array of knowledge on the world of the occult in world religion. It's called Priesthood of the Elites. It's on my website. And beneath it is a second video I did called Dawn of a New Day. I don't know if you've seen it yourself, Dawn of a New Day, but
yes.
It's explaining in detail the kind of thing I'm talking about in relation to how the Roman system dominates the earth today. And of course, at the very first thing you will see on that What's New page is the hidden dimension in world affairs, and you can see it's about the Vatican. So I have a lot of material that you can get right now that's documented stuff, especially that Priesthood of the Elites, 3 books, typewritten manuscripts on the very subject we're talking about now.
And you've released all of your research files, correct?
Yes, I have. That was on one computer. I have 6 computers with incredible amount of material on all of them. This was one of the research files I have, which has like 3.4 gigabytes, 161 folders, 5,080 items. That's just one folder, but and I've got more coming. But this is over 5,000 documents and materials, research materials. So on the What's New on my website, jordanmaxwell.com, a lot of stuff dealing directly with what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and support Jordan, ladies and gentlemen, because when you do this kind of thing, you don't get rich, you go broke, and you go broke very fast. And
no doubt about it.
He's dedicated his life to bring you all of this knowledge. So pick up a couple of DVDs. Not only are they a good watch, but you're supporting a very, very talented researcher. Jordan, you mentioned the Knights Templar again, and I want to go back to that because I'm trying to understand this. There was a split, like we were talking earlier. Friday the 13th, the Vatican ordered all of the Knights Templar dead. The Knights Templar were the first banking system. How did the two groups come back together?
Well, I think, that's the way, again, that's the way organized crime operates, They have blood feuds as to who's going to run the organization when the big man dies, like in the time of Al Capone. And so there's a lot of blood feuds on the street to see who's going to run the mob now that the boss is gone. But once everything is settled down, it's business as usual, just like the Mafia said, and there's nothing personal in any of this. It's just business. And so ultimately it's just business. Sometimes you have to end up realizing that your opponent that used to be your friend, that used to work for you, is now himself very powerful. And so now it just requires that you work, do what you have to do and grit your teeth and deal with somebody who is now your opponent in the world of business. So the Vatican has always operated behind the scenes of the world politically and monetarily, but especially politically, because religion is a very big tool, as you well know. There's wars going on today in the Middle East based on religion, based on theology, and this is where the real trick is. Once you understand the basis for theology and religion, and where these religious movements have come from, and how they're being used by the secret societies promoting these different religious movements, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Those people, those 3 religions are called people of the book. The reason why is because all 3 of those religions rely on a book, unlike Hinduism and Buddhism and other philosophies of the East, more philosophical and spiritual in their orientation. But the 3 religions of the West, so to speak, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, rely on a book. So they're called the people of the book. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just what I've looked at for 50 years. I don't believe for a minute that even Muhammad existed. I don't think Muhammad ever existed. I think that was a story that was dreamt up by the Jesuits and perhaps even a more secret society behind the Jesuits before they were incorporated. I think the Vatican is ultimately responsible for what we call today Islam. I think it was a Roman development for and given to the Arabic peoples. And we know that the Catholic Church and Vatican has been heavily involved in the affairs of the Middle East and the Arabic nations behind the scenes with the Knights Templars, because that's what they were doing there with the Crusades. So I don't believe Jesus existed. But I'm not in any way saying that the New Testament is not important. It is a very important book. It's telling you some extraordinarily important things about life, but it's encoded. You have to understand how to read the symbols. And once you do begin to see the encoded story in the New Testament, it begins to make a lot of sense. All the stories begin to make sense, because there's so much in the New Testament story of Jesus that absolutely defies imagination. I mean, why does Judas go out and kiss Jesus? Why is one man going out to kiss another? And the Christians will tell you, well, that's why Judas went out to kiss Jesus, to identify him so he could be arrested. That's not what the Scripture says at all. It doesn't say that. It says Judas went out to betray Jesus, to kiss Jesus, to betray him, not to identify him. And that goes back to a very ancient story of betrayal by the scorpion, which is Scorpio. The constellation of Scorpio is the backbiter. The backbiter who gives Jesus, or God's Son, the kiss of death because he is going to die in winter. It's a very ancient metaphysical story based on astrotheology that's been rewoven into an encoded story we call the New Testament. But as long as you do not know that encoded story, and as long as you're accepting that story as actual history, then you're going to be part of what is referred to today as the world of Babylon the Great, confusion. It's all a bunch of babble. So the stuff all you need to do to confirm this is to go watch a Christian radio or television. Go watch TBN and watch the incredible babble, silliness, selling junk and toys and jumping on the stage and singing hymns and doing backflips and breaking bricks and all kinds of silly things to entertain the masses, while nothing of any intellectual value whatsoever is being given to anyone. So, as far as I'm concerned, Christian television is a mockery of the human race. And if there was a God, it's mocking the very Creator by entertaining people with silliness and stupidity.
Well, absolutely.
I, on the other hand, am very interested intellectually and spiritually in the deep understanding of Scriptures and what it's actually saying to us. You know, there's a scripture that has Jesus saying, by their fruits you shall know them. Well, what is the fruitage of the Vatican if it is not wars, violence, revolutions, murder, people burning people at the stake, prisons, all of this whole monstrosity that we had in America under the Bush regime? The Bushes were very pro-Nazi with their the Gestapo, SS tactics, waterboarding, all of the incredible Nazi tactics, connections to the Nazi Party, and even we know that Prescott Bush himself was one of the financiers of Adolf Hitler. So the Bush family were very, very in-your-face Nazi, SS, Gestapo, and they ran this great republic like Adolf Hitler would. And then, of course, when we found that people finally figured out that the Bushes are nothing but a bunch of Nazis, then they went for Obama, who came directly out of Moscow. It's an incredible story of we're going from left to right, from one hand to the next, and having no idea in the world what we're doing. The whole world loved Obama, never realizing that the people who are behind Obama, like Zbigniew Brzezinski and all the other people who were the financiers and the manipulators behind the scenes to put Obama into power, were themselves Soviet communists, taught and trained under Soviet communism, Bolsheviki communism. It's just an incredible array of stupidity that this country has been wallowing in, from going from Nazism to communism to fascism. We keep trying to make these things work. They have never worked. Hitler collapsed. The Communist Party collapsed in Russia. But thank God America's here. We'll just keep pushing Nazism and fascism and communism and all the other totalitarian fascist systems, trying to make this crap work.
Well, it's a democratic dictatorship, for sure.
It would be interesting just to go back and watch and run this country like Americans. That would be a clever idea, just to run it like the original Americans, you know, who founded the country. I'd like to see a country run by Americans instead of foreign people who represent the Vatican and who represent the mafia. I'd like to see this country run by Americans, just for the hell of it, just for a couple of years to see what would happen. So, as far as I'm concerned, this entire superstructure of America is a very, very dark and evil, corrupt system based on Rome, based on the Vatican, and based on the worship of pagan gods. It's all over and everywhere in your face. Look at the, like I said, by their fruits you shall know them.
All you have to do is look at the symbolism behind them. I mean, it's
my God, it's
all
everywhere.
over the place. And we have a great question from the chat room. Somebody asked, on your recent trip, did you happen to see the many sculptures of the pine cones, which are basically the pineal glands everywhere?
That's right.
Yes, and can you elaborate a little bit on the courtyard aerial view, which appears to be a keyhole, and does this relate to the Temple of Solomon, which appears to represent the sexual union of man and woman?
That's right. It all is very much so. As a matter of fact, the whole courtyard, and it's on my website actually. I've got a lot of information on that. Yes, it is a keyhole because the Pope holds the two keys, the key to heavenly power and the key to earthly power. They're crossed, and all of that is very well known. And if you go on, as a matter of fact, if you go on my website to the links and scroll down on my links page to a section called Religion Theology. The first entry is a very big, I made it very large so you can't miss it. It's called Christianism.com. And go to Christianism.com on my links page under Religion and Theology. And it's only about 6,500 pages of documents on everything to do with religion, where the words came from, who founded what, who financed what these words mean, who were these secret societies. Over 6,600 pages of documents was put together by a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine in San Diego. He's a doctor, and he put this thing together, and it's a mind blower. He's traveled all over the world for many years researching the Vatican, religion, the Bible, where all of these things have come from. It's a mind-blowing experience, and it's for free. It's right there on the web if you just go and sit for the next couple of years and go through 6,600 pages plus about 35 or 40 links that he has on his website. So there's just an awful lot of material out there, but most people are too busy watching basketball to fool with any of it. Besides, it doesn't make much sense because it has nothing to do with soccer or or anything else that we're considered to be very important right now.
Absolutely. Our listeners, though, are tuned in with a lot of questions. Let me go to one more from them. What is the current situation of the Black Pope?
Oh yes, well they've just changed. They've changed chairs here just recently. The man who was the Black Pope. The Black Pope is simply the Jesuit general, the man who was in charge of the Jesuits, and God knows that's a story right there in itself. Who are the Jesuits? What are they, and what part do they play in the downfall of America? What part do they play in the uprisings and murder for hire in Central America, Mexico, the drug cartels, meddling drug cartels in Colombia? What part did the Jesuits play for the Vatican and for the Knights Templars in the world of white slavery, pornography, drug running, murder for hire, all of the most incredible, filthiest, and dirtiest stuff in the world? Jesuits are involved in. And the church is involved in. We know that the Catholic Church is involved in all kinds of pornographic stuff and drug running and murder for hire and overthrow of countries. There's a lot of stuff that people just don't know. And unless and until we look up and find out what this whole Roman institution that's dominated the globe for over 3,000 years, until we wake up and find out what America was supposed to be and why the founding fathers had to do it over here and leave Europe to come here for freedom, and why is it that when America was founded, the Catholic Church was not allowed to operate in this country? That is a fact of history. The Catholic Church was outlawed when this country was first founded and was not allowed to operate in America. When, in fact of law, and point of fact, it is today running the whole planet. And so I'm just amazed at how much we don't know and how much we don't care to know. And that's why, incidentally, I'm going to start very soon. I'm going to start a private club where it's going to be a research society, a research club, and people will have to join it. Because I'm tired of just talking to the masses, because I'm 70 years old. I don't have many more years on this earth. I've spent 50 years pursuing this kind of knowledge. I am aware, I'm painfully well aware, that the majority of the people on the earth couldn't care less about anything I'm talking about. I know that, and especially in America. It has nothing, as I said, to do with sports. So there are some people in this country and around the globe who are awakened and who are intellectually enlightened to know that there's something drastically evil going on the earth and want to know. So I'm setting up, and I'm in the process of doing it right now, a research organization whereby you can come to get tons of material. I have boxes in storage in my garage of incredible materials, documents and pictures, diagrams of how this system works, how the government works, how banks work, how the religious operations of the churches operate behind the scenes with the mafia, with the underworld, with the international gangster movements around the world. I had an FBI agent tell me many years ago. He called me from San Diego, and I've said this in public many times. I had an FBI agent call and warn me. He said, when you're talking about, right now, he told me, this was years ago, he said, right now when you're talking about government, your government does not see you as any real problem right now. But when you talk about the church, especially the Catholic Church in America, you are talking about organized crime. You're talking about mafia, underworld, La Cosa Nostra. You're talking about the Roman system. And when you do that, somewhere along the line, they're going to have enough of you. So your life may be in danger, not from your government, but from the church. Because the church in America is nothing more than a criminal syndicate. And it has been raping this country and raping the poor people. And somewhere along the line, you're exposing this to get you in trouble. Not with your government, but with religion. That was the advice from an FBI agent. So I know what I'm up against. I know that most people in this country love their churches. They see their churches as the bastions of light and wisdom and knowledge, when in point of fact they're nothing more than 501c3 corporations incorporated under the federal government. It's really a tragic story of where our great republic is, where our people are mentally and spiritually. And unless and until we wake up and find out we've been had, it's over for us. America's enemies have taken us over from Europe. They've opened the doors to allow. Where do you think, and why do you think the problem of illegal immigrants comes from? They're coming from Mexico. They're coming from across the border from Canada. What we're seeing is actually the destruction of the great Republic of America. But there's a reason for it. There's something going on here, and you cannot have a new world order in which the biggest guy on the block is still too strong to submit. So you've got to destroy the great Republic, which represented freedom and liberty and justice for all mankind. You've got to destroy that power, and you've got to do it in such a way that the people will never suspect what you're doing. Because if the American people ever figure out who is really doing this to us and how it's being worked, and who the culprits who are destroying our great country, they're going to rebel. And when they do, we got a lot of people with guns, and it's going to be very, very unhealthy out there for everyone. So the way our country is being destroyed, it has to be done in such a way that nobody is going to really figure out the name of the tune. And once in a while, somebody might figure a little bit of it out. They'll go to prison or be whacked. And so that's why I'm saying, if you want to understand what's going on in America, you better look at Rome. You better look at the Roman history for the past 3,000 years. You better look at why America was founded. And you better look at the secret societies, the fraternal orders coming out of Rome, because that's what's killing your country today. And we are being given basketball and soccer instead of being told who is destroying our great country.
Well, let me ask you this, another question from the chat room, which kind of goes on topic right now. Could you ask Jordan if he thinks that humans have any chance to turn the world around, or are we too far gone?
Well, you're asking for a subjective opinion, and it's just my opinion. I say no. There is no possible way for human life forms to protect themselves. Let me give you an example. Out in the Serengeti plains of Africa, you see the thousands of animals grazing out on the plains of Africa. You see the lions crawling very quietly. The lions are organized. The animals out there grazing on the plains of Africa, they're not only not organized, they don't even know they're alive. They're just out doing what they normally do, eating, watching their young, and moving along to find more grass to eat. So they're just trying to stay alive and do whatever it is they do as an animal. But the lions are different. They are organized. They know exactly what they're doing. And they're crawling quietly, and they are calculating what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. Well, that's what's happening with America. The American people are so busy watching television and playing games and watching all the silly nonsense of games on television. Nobody is reading. Nobody is questioning anything. We go along to get along. I do not believe, and it's just my opinion, I do not believe the human race can be saved. That's my opinion. I don't think we have a chance in hell. Not at all. And the reason why is because if you try and tell people what I'm telling you, they're going to think there's something wrong with you. They're going to call the police on you. You must be an Al-Qaeda or a communist or something. And because you are bad-mouthing their Lord. The Lord, and never realizing the English word Lord, look it up in the English dictionary, and you will find L-O-R-D was originally L-A-R-D. It's just very disappointing in life for me to see America and where she is today and what's going on with her, because I know the people do not know who the enemy is. And they will continue to crawl on their knees to their enemies, never realizing the people you're doing business with are underworld criminals coming out of Rome, Pontifex Maximus, the entire dirty system of the what we call our Senate, our Congress, up on the Hill. All of this is a very ancient, evil system, and we have fallen prey to it, like all the other peoples in the world. As a matter of fact, we're the ones that are leading the world into all of this mess. So don't look for anything coming out of the churches to save anything. The churches can't save themselves. All they're doing is jumping around the stage, doing dances, and collecting money. And it's incredible. Just go watch TBN.
Let's take another break. Let's take another break and do one more segment on the other side. Yeah. This is Truth Frequency Radio. We are speaking, and we are back on American Freedom Radio. TruthFrequencyRadio.com is the website, and we are speaking with the legend Jordan Maxwell. JordanMaxwell.com is his website. And Jordan, people in the chat room are talking about the research society that you're starting up, and they want to know how they can become a part of it.
Well, just email me and tell me you want to be a part of it. Just very quick email, and then I will have in my email file, and then I will get back to you and let you know how to do and what we're doing and when we're going to do it. Because what I want to do is I want to start a research organization. I've been told by some of my attorney friends that there's two ways of doing business in this world, public and private. And when you're making yourself available to the public, government has the right to come in and protect the public from you telling them too much they're not supposed to know. And so they can come after you for talking about things you're not supposed to talk about in America. And they can put you in jail for talking about subjects you're not supposed to be talking about in public. And so if you think that's foolish, just try it. Like Dick Gregory says, go out and try talking about things you're not supposed to talk about and see how quick you end up in jail. But I was told by my attorney friends that if you start a research society where people have to join and ask to join, then you can talk about anything you wish and you're covered lawfully and legally. Let me give you an example. If you're a member of the Ku Klux Klan or some racist organization of any kind, you can talk all you want in your church and in your group among yourselves, anything you want to say about anybody, no matter how blasphemous it is. You have a right to talk among yourselves or to say anything you want. But if you go out on the street and start talking that way, now you're covered under law. Now the law can come in because you are now talking to the public. And the government is supposedly empowered to protect the public. So as long as you keep it private, you can talk about anything you want. Well, that's what I want to do. I want to start a private organization where I can, for the first time in all these years, really say what I want to say and really expose the stuff I want to expose and be able to be a floodgate of material, documents, pictures, all kinds of stuff that people have no idea that even exists, that I've been working on for all these many years. So all you have to do is just go on the web and email me. Go to my website, and at the top of the page there's a button that says contact. And on the contact page, scroll down to the bottom email. That's my personal email. And just say you want to be a member of the research club, the research organization. And then I'll have you in my emails, and then we'll be getting back to you within probably a month or so. We're going to start emailing people, telling them what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So just go on my email and go on my website to Jordan, Jordan, Maxwell, MAXWELL.com. And go to contact and tell me you want to be a part of it. We'll get back to you.
Excellent, excellent.
Now, one other thing in relation to what we've been talking about. If you go on my website and go to what's new, you will see, as I said to you before, the two products that I think will be very important in relation to what we're talking about today. Scroll down till you see the two products. One is called Priesthood of the Illes, ILLES. And this is, and read, there's a little bit of a caption there to explain to you what this is all about. It's 3 different books on typewritten. It was written many years ago on a typewriter. And it's a typewritten manuscript, but there are 3 separate books in one, explaining all the words, the terms, the symbols, the concepts and ideas and belief systems of the hidden occult world of religion and how it impacts our political world system. And beneath that is a video I did, which is called Dawn of a New Day, and it talks about the thing that we've been talking about today. It's all there. So Priesthood of the Illes and Dawn of a New Day are talking about everything we've been talking about so far.
Well, here's another great question from the chat. What role does Sirius, the star system, play in the Vatican's worship system?
Yeah, that's interesting because Sirius is called the dog star. There's a whole lot of information on that I have in one of my computers. I've been collecting that material for years. That's a very big subject of Sirius, the dog star. But I think even more important in relation to religion instead of Sirius is the planet Saturn. I see Saturn as probably the single most important subject in world religion today. Saturn is extremely important in world religions around the earth, but especially in Judaism and Christianity. And also it has a lot to do with Islam also, that people do not know. Jews, Christians, and the Muslim world is not aware of the part that Saturn plays, the planet Saturn plays, in our religion of the book, on the people of the book. So that's another subject for another time. But a lot of this material is on my website. All you've got to do, go to jordanmaxwell.com and hit the word, you'll see at the top of the page, research. Click on research and it will take you to a bunch of boxes, and each one of those boxes are filled to the brim with all kinds of occult research on symbols and emblems, on Saturn worship. It's all right there. Just go to my website. You'll see it all right there, and I've got a lot more coming.
Well, do you have any info on the Ark of the Covenant?
Oh, wow, the Ark of the Covenant. As a matter of fact, I've got a whole thing on that on my website with pictures and documents on that whole subject. The Ark of the Covenant is not Hebrew. It never was a Hebrew symbol ever. Ark of the Covenant was an Egyptian symbol. It was called the Ark of the Contract, not Ark of the Covenant. Go on my website to jordanmaxwell.com, go to research button at the top, and I think it's called the button I want that you need to go to is called Hidden Roots of Religion. It's on the top row of boxes. And I think that's probably one of the very first entries I've got on the Hidden Roots of Religion is on the Ark of the Covenant. What is it? Who actually had the Ark of the Covenant? And who actually owned it, and what is it, and where is it today? So that's on my website already. You know, the Ark of the Covenant was never Hebrew. The Hebrews borrowed that from the Egyptians. The Egyptians had the original Ark of the Covenant. That's why Steven Spielberg, in his movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, do not ultimately find the Ark in the Holy Land of Israel, because Israel's nothing holy about it. There's nothing holy in Israel. The only thing holy in Israel are the stories. They're full of holes. The only thing holy in Israel are the stories. So they are totally filled with holes. None of it makes any sense. And even the best scholars today are saying that none of the history of Israel, ancient Israel, is true. None of it. Some of the best archaeologists in the state of Israel today, in one of their books called the Bible on Earth, the Unearthing the Bible, or the Bible on Earth, with two of the top archaeologists in Israel have written a book in which they're saying absolutely nothing in the Old Testament actually happened in history. None of it. There was no ancient Israel. There was no Moses leading the people out from the desert. None of that actually, in fact, was historical fact. And that's archaeologists in Israel saying that, not me. But if you want to look at this whole subject of the Ark of the Covenant, I mean, just look at what Steven Spielberg is not a fool. He spends a lot of money and time on researching for his movies. And he has Indiana Jones, when they're going to look for the lost Ark, first place they go to, obviously, the first place you have to go to is Tibet. Why would Indiana Jones have to go to Tibet first to find the lost Ark of Israel? Well, it has nothing to do with Israel. It has to do with Tibet. And so what's the symbol in Tibet? Well, once you go to Tibet to look for the lost Ark, the next thing you're going to have to do is go where the lost Ark is. And he goes to Egypt. And that's where they find the lost Ark is in Egypt, not the Holy Land. So once you understand that Steven Spielberg is trying to tell you something, that the lost Ark of the Hebrews is not Hebrew at all, it was an Egyptian symbol. And it has to do with some very ancient Egyptian magical teachings. And the Hebrews, or what we call the Hebrew establishment today, picked up the lost Ark of the Covenant or contract and made it into a story in the Old Testament and made it a Hebrew symbol. It's not Hebrew. It's Egyptian. Go on my website, as I said, go to research, and go to research button, and it's called Hidden Roots of Religion. Go through that. It's a huge amount of information on all kinds of religious subjects, and that's one of the very first ones on the ark.
Well, people in the chat room right now are talking about the time when you met George Lucas. Can you tell them? Can you excuse me? Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was invited to a party by Disney. Disney Studios invited me to a private party at Disneyland. You had to have all the ID and everything to even get in. They shut Disneyland down for a day for a huge private party. And there were 3 sections to that party. There was a general section where most of the people invited were members of the news media, magazines, and newspapers, etc. Then there was a second set, which you had to have ID to go into this particular section, where it was for movie stars, but especially for writers and Hollywood writers and Hollywood people, dealing with the storylines of movies, etc. Then there was a third section, which was only for a special handful of people, and I happened by chance to be fortunate enough to get that particular ID. And so I was able to be there with Michael Eisner, Lucas, and all kinds of high-powered names and movie stars. And I sat down because we were eating, and I sat down at the little table where Michael Eisner and George Lucas were sitting with Roy Disney, and they were sitting eating, but there were long tables, and then the way it worked is that you just pick up what food you want and just go find a place at these long tables. So I picked the food I wanted. I went in, sat down, just at just found a place and sat down, and then I realized I'm sitting next to Michael Eisner and across from George Lucas. And so I introduced myself. They were very courteous, very nice. And George Lucas said to me, when I told him my name, he said, Jordan Maxwell, he said, you wrote a book with Steve Allen, did you, about something about the book your church doesn't want you to read? And I said, yes, I did. And I said, I'm honored that you would have known about my book. He said, no, I know your name and I know the book. And he said, and the reason why I know the book is because my wife loved the book. I don't do a lot of reading. I have other researchers doing the research for me. But my wife made me read your part of this book. She thought your particular part was important, and she made me read it. That's why I'm remembering your name. So he said, so your part in that book was very important to her. And so he said, and so that's why I remember your name. He said, do you have a business card? Yes, I did. And so we had a nice conversation, and Michael Eisner asked him, well, what are you guys talking about? And then we got a chance to sit and I had an opportunity to then sit and talk with Michael Eisner, president of Disney, and Lucas about my work, astral theology, the symbolism of Hollywood and symbolism of the world of entertainment, and my friendship with Steve Allen and all the other people that I've known. So it was a very nice occasion, and we spent about 45 minutes just sitting and talking, and I of course jumped at the idea of getting some pictures made with them. And just one of those pictures is on my website. I got many pictures of me with a lot of the different movie stars. But Michael Eisner and George Lucas were very, very nice. I mean, I really liked them because they were very kind and very courteous, but they were also very well informed. They were very well informed. The stuff I was talking about, they understood. They would say things like, "Yeah, we know that. I understand that." So it just tells me that the people behind the motion picture industry and entertainment in general, they're not stupid. They know where these things have come from. It's just the people, the ordinary man in the street, who doesn't know. There's people in Hollywood who write these movies and I go to a bookstore all the time in Hollywood that's very big for writers, people in the motion picture and television field. It's what I guess you would call an occult bookstore. It's called Bodhi Tree Bookstore. And it's filled with all kinds of interesting books on religions and cults and secret societies and religious stuff. It's very, very interesting store, and I go there all the time, and I always happen by chance to meet some writers. They recognize me. We sit and talk about some movies or television shows they're doing. So yes, I know a lot of the people in Hollywood because I should. I've been here for 51 years. So I've met so many people in Hollywood. They know who I am. Many people are aware of my work in Hollywood. A lot of my stuff has been mimicked in motion pictures. So
well, let me ask you this. Now that we're on the topic, another question from the chat. Have you seen the TV show V? And the episode where the aliens are passing out booklets, The Dawn of a New Day.
That's what. And so my video came out about 4 months before that. I didn't know anything about I didn't even know they were filming it, making that television series. But I've been working for over 40 years on the subject, and I finally got an opportunity to put it all together into a video, which you can purchase on my website. Go to What's New, or go to the store. It's the one and the same thing. Go to What's New and scroll down. You'll see Dawn of a New Day. And in that, I talk about the symbol of the dawn of a new day, what it means to the world communist movement. It's a communist symbol for the collectivism of the whole human race under a totalitarian regime. And all the documents are there, all the pictures are there. I did a whole thing on that. Then, like 4 or 5 months later, comes the television show V, and that's one of the main things in the whole V series is talking about the dawn of a new day. I was shocked when I saw that. I thought, my God, that's what I've been talking about for 40 years. I finally put a video out, and there it is. Now it's everywhere. Now you're beginning to see the communist term dawn of a new day, because it's straight out of communist philosophy, straight out of the Soviet communist system, that term, that secret term that's called dawn of a new day. The communist symbol, it means something to the communist world that most Americans have no idea in the world what it implies and what it means. I did. I've known about it for 45 years. But yes, it's in the V series, Dawn of a New Day. It was shocking to me. There it is in your face.
Let me go back to a law question. I know we've got about 11 minutes left in the broadcast, so guys, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all your questions, but somebody's asking about the definition of a human being in Black's Law Dictionary, being a monster, and a monster, of course, somebody who can't own property. Is that still accurate?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's still accurate, though they have toned it down. You know, that was for years ago, before, when the population was totally oblivious to life and nobody was reading anything. But now that people are starting to wake up, the dictionaries are changing some of the terms and words, but the concept is still very much lawful and legal concept that human beings are, in fact, maritime admiralty products. We are referred to as monsters. One of the biggest employment agency in the country is called Monster. Putting people back to work is a big company called Monster. Why? It's because we as human beings, the very word human being, lawfully means someone who does not have the right to own land. And this is why when you sign any kind of a document, or you're filling out any kind of an application, they will always ask you if you're male or female on your driver's license, to male or female. But if you go back to the British language, and you will find out, there's a book out, I can't remember the name of the book, it's a textbook on how words are used in the English language, what they mean lawfully. And according to the law of language of the English language, male and female applies to an animal only. To humans, both a man and a woman are referred to lawfully as masculine and feminine. Masculine, feminine for man and woman, but for animals, male and female. That's the law in English language. So when you, on your driver's license, on your insurance, or anything where it says male or female, it's telling you you are an animal. You are a maritime admiralty product. You came out of your mother's water. You are a water product. And so that's the way the law works. That's a whole story in itself, the occult world of law. I mean, why do you go to court when you play basketball on the court? That's why you go to court. You play tennis on the court. And how do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket, because the whole thing is a racket. They don't use these words by chance. They don't dream up these words and use them and never suspecting what they mean. My God, you need to wake up and find out the words that are being used in courts and commerce and banking and government are well thought out terms that mean something. So when you say I'm a human being and I have human rights, that's right. You have what is called human right. You have a human right. You have the right of a human, which is an animal. You're male and female, like a dog.
Well,
so
let me
that's
go.
Why you have, today we talk about the children of Israel, but we don't have children. We have kids. So they ask you, well, how are your kids? Kids are baby goats. They're not children. They're kids. They're goats. You are a maritime admiralty product. And we use these terms all the time, never realizing that the way government and insurance companies and the 14th Amendment, the way insurance companies look at us is we are nothing more than animals with a serial number. This is why you have to button. This is why you have to have insurance in a car and wear a seat belt. There's a reason for that. It has nothing to do with protecting you. It has to do with the fact that your body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Your physical body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange, where they are buying and selling you like they do pigs, animals, dogs, and anything else that's alive. You are a maritime admiralty product. Your car is not owned by you. It's owned by the insurance company that actually owns the bank. And so the bank and the insurance company wants to ensure that you, as a product, don't get hurt, because you're supposed to be out there making money to pay your taxes. So they don't want to have to pay you to stay home. So you have to be covered by insurance, and you have to buckle up so that nothing happens to your body, because it's on the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, let me ask you this.
All of the way this world works, people have no idea in the world the way law and government really work.
How do you fill out the paperwork? Is another question from the chat. When you go to court, how do you plead? Because a slave pleads, a free man doesn't plead. And what about when being booked? What does one say in that situation?
Well, yes. No, I'm not going to get into that. But if you want to go on my website, again, go to links, because I'm not a lawyer. I can't give any advice. I'm just an educator. I'm just trying to educate people. But if you go on my website to links and scroll down, because all my links are in different departments, scroll down till you see law and commerce, or commerce and law. And those links, go through all of those links. It explains everything in nauseating detail. Everything is there under links on my website under law and commerce. So just go there and start reading. It's all there.
All right, and we're about to wrap it up. Let's see. I think that's all the time for questions that we have. Let me go to one more. It says, please ask about the ancient cultures such as Greece, Egypt, and Rome sharing themes as if it's the same families controlling all the way through.
Yeah, that's an interesting subject about ancient Rome. Just as today in America and in Europe, especially in England, the Rothschild banking, the Rockefeller banking, the Rothschild banking establishments behind European and American governments, the real bankers behind our country. In the Roman Empire, the bankers who were the real powers of banking in the ancient Roman Empire was the Pisos family, P-I-C-O-S, Pisos. And you can look up the research on the Arius Copernicus Pisos and the Pisos family. And they were the powers behind the Roman Empire. They were the international bankers, the international tricksters who were manipulating the Roman Empire from behind the scenes, just as like the Rothschild and Rockefellers are doing with our great republic today. So it's a very interesting. As a matter of fact, the New York Times and the LA Times did a 3 or 4 page article on the Pisos family many years ago. I still have the paper. It was a very interesting article about the Pisos family. So yeah, there's all kinds of history that we as Americans are not allowed to know about. You have to go looking for it. You have to work to know.
Let me go to one more question. Werner von Braun's secretary spoke of possible false flag alien invasion. When we do see aliens...
There's a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
Well, you know what, that is a great question, because I've been looking and talking to all the people in this field for many, many years. I know virtually all the major names in the UFO occult field around the world. I've talked to them about this. That's a whole story in itself, and we don't have time to get into it. But I think that there is in fact, alien presence on the Earth. I think there is an alien presence here. And I could talk with you about that for another half hour, because I had a long conversation with a large group of people many years ago at a big conference I was at. And all the biggest names were there. And we were talking about that very subject. And I heard that many years ago about von Braun saying that. I have a different opinion. I think there's something more to what, because he was a Nazi to start with, and he was hiding a lot of information. So I don't think you should take the voice of the word of a Nazi just that quick. There's something more going on here that's even bigger than you think. We could talk about that another time.
Absolutely, we need to do that. And anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
I would say that I have some very valuable materials on my website, as you have said. That's what I live by. I live a very mundane life. I just live my life for research and study, and I have a lot of material on my website in the like on what's new that I would suggest you might want to get while it's still available, because one never knows what's going on today. When stuff is being taken off the websites, websites are being dropped by government. So, I would just suggest going on my website and getting the materials. Go through what's new, and of course the store, and you will see a lot of things there that probably you didn't even know was on my website. And go through all of my links. Go through the entire website. A lot of good videos down there you need to get. So I appreciate your opportunity, the opportunity to talk with you.
We appreciate you coming on the broadcast, Jordan, and hopefully we can get into the aliens on the next one.
Yeah, that's a big subject, boy.
Absolutely. I do have to ask, though, because last time we had you on the broadcast, we were bombarded with this. And I don't mean any disrespect by this at all, but it's something that a lot of listeners were bringing to the table. There's a video with yourself and Zechariah Sitchin, and there's a pretty interesting handshake there. And they were trying to...
And let me tell you, yes, I know, that's nonsense. It's totally, I was just flabbergasted when I heard people saying something about that. I was just shaking hands with an old man. I'm an old man. I shook hands with an old man. I don't know. I'm not going to make it to a very royal handshake. I was just shaking hands with an old man like I do with anybody.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with Masonry at all, but it has to do with detractors, especially religious zealots, who want to paint me as being some kind of a conspirator. And I've always felt if I was a conspirator, at least I'd be able to pay my rent. I've lived in a little one-room office with no shower, and there's a little dinky little one room for 11, 12 years with no money. I lived on Social Security with nothing. I had nothing. I have nothing, and I'm doing. And the reason I have nothing is because I've spent my whole life doing what I do, only to have Christians and super patriots who are saying I'm a conspirator. It's ludicrous on the face of it. Totally ludicrous.
Okay.
How I live.
I just wanted to get that on the record.
I understand. I understand. It's just ludicrous.
I know.
And it's detractors trying to say something about me that's not true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jordan, it's been great. We really appreciate it. We respect all the work you do, and we can get you back on soon.
Thank you very much for the invitation to start with. Thank you.
You have a great evening.